Okay. So, folks, we just have a bit of a computer problem, so just bear with us and we'll get started as soon as we can here. Thank you. Okay, we're good to go. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We'll call the meeting to order. Common Clerk, first item.
Your Worship, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of June the 3rd.
So moved.
Okay, moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Motion's carried. Next item.
Next item is item 3, approval of agenda, and there are 4 proposed additions from Committee of the Whole. The first one would be 17.1, Cherry Brook Zoo Letter of Intent, 17.2, Intergovernmental Affairs Position, 17.3, Aquatic Center Interim Financing, and 17.4, C Street Estate Subdivision.
I'll move the agenda as approved or as amended. And also, could we move item number 12, 5 up to the beginning of the meeting?
Okay, thank you. Got that? Okay. On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Okay, next item.
Worship, item 12.5 is the ICE Strategy Plan B implementation.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Commissioner Huguenot's. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Huguenot's.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, and members of Council. Before you this evening is a recommendation on the mechanism for cost recovery for non-resident users of our arena facilities. Mr. O'Reilly will be walking you through a detailed presentation, but I wanted to highlight a few points first. The City of St. John certainly remains open to a collaborative regional approach for cost sharing, but the window is rapidly closing. The City has invested over $5 million just over the last 5 years to support ice sport use, which has benefited both residents and non-residents. As part of the City's overall efforts to become more financially sustainable, Council has previously endorsed the concept of seeking full cost recovery from non-residents for the use in our facilities. The City will continue to support residents' use of arena facilities in St. John, and we recognize the potential significant impacts to volunteer ice associations from any drastic changes, and are recommended a phased approach to implementation of this new model. So with those few comments, I'll turn it over to Mr. O'Reilly.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, we'll get you a microphone.
Good.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Thank
thanks. So first, I just wanted to touch on Plan A. That was the regional ice strategy. I spoke in length about this in March with Council, but essentially over the past year and a half, the city's been working with other regional partners and the Commission on a regional ice strategy to determine a different way to manage our rinks in the entire region. So that work's been going on for about a year and a half, and unfortunately there's no consensus, particularly related to a new cost-sharing model for those facilities. Despite that inability to reach consensus, I have been doing a lot of consultations with the community on this issue, particularly some of our most important stakeholders, the ice associations in the region. And one thing is loud and clear from them, and it's been loud and clear from this Common Council as well, is that regional solution to managing ice arenas is the preferred solution by far. So the very first recommendation in the staff report this evening for Council is essentially to continue to support any motion brought before the Regional Service Commission that attempts to develop sustainable, fair, and tangible solutions to managing arenas. So the wording in the recommendations are to that the applicable operating deficits for all arenas in the region will be shared based on usage. If we can get to that particular aspect of the agreement, the working group would come back together, hire a consultant if necessary to develop those costs and develop those usage data, and then bring that information back to the Commission again. So part of that work would be to ensure we have consistent data between all the municipalities that have rinks to make sure we have our cost data consistent and our usage data consistent. If, at a future point in time, we do get that consensus regionally, We will report back to Common Council at a later date on what was agreed upon, and potentially have the recommendation before Council to delay a Plan B approach to finding that regional approach to ICE. So, again, after a year and a half, I've been working on this Plan A, or this regional solution, without consensus. Back in March, we did receive the approval from Council that if that consensus was received by May the 1st of this year, we would proceed with planning for non-resident user fees. The intent of that Plan B, or those non-resident user fees, is to essentially ensure that our taxpayers of the City of St. John continue to subsidize our users of our arenas, but that we would stop subsidizing non-resident use of those arenas. It's very similar to Plan A as to what the city's been proposing in the region in terms of making sure that our taxpayers subsidize use by our residents, but that the deficits are shared regionally. There are two options in the report that are discussed: a full cost recovery rate and resident rebate program that I actually briefed Council back in the fall about. That essentially entails raising our arena rates to full cost recovery to cover our costs, and we would have a rebate program in place where a taxpayer subsidization would go directly back to residents that use our arenas. The second option, which is being discussed for the first time with Council this evening, is the idea of a recreation card and non-resident user fee program. So in that particular solution, we continue to have subsidized rates of our arenas, but we'd have a non-resident user fee that would cover the taxpayer subsidization of those costs. We're recommending this evening that Common Council approve option 2, which is the recreation card and non-resident user fee program. Pros and cons of both those options are detailed in the staff report, but just highlights the reason why I recommended option 2 over option 1. We did hear that there was going to be an impact on city residents financially by the option 1. And through consultations with the ICE associations, I wouldn't say option 2 is preferred by them, because neither one is preferred, but certainly option 1 was preferred less by the associations than the recreation card program. So recommending that option. Under the recreation card program, all residents and non-residents that use our facilities would require to obtain a recreation card from the City of St. John. So residents would receive it free of charge with proof of residency, and non-residents would have to pay a non-resident user fee before acquiring a card. Just for a bit of clarity as well, I've been getting this question lately on what non-residents or what residents would require these cards. Any association that rents ice from the City of St. John, the participants in those associations will be required to obtain a recreation card from the city. So on the flip side, those groups that would not require a recreation card would be when you have tournaments, you bring other teams from other associations or outside of St. John in, those people would not require a card. Very low users in the City of St. John, so if you rent ice maybe less than 15 hours over the course of a season, you would not require to purchase a card. And those, so it's basically associations that rent ice from the City of St. John, both the residents and non-residents on those leagues and associations. We intend, as part of this plan, to hire consulting services to help roll it out. I have 3 points up there that indicate what we'll be using those consulting services for. The first 2 of the 3 would essentially be a one-time investment the first time we do this, in terms of helping us roll it out and setting up the systems to be in place. The card disbursement program would be the only cost that we'd have to incur year after year, and I'll get into that in a few minutes. We'd cross-reference the information we receive with the cards from the residents and non-residents against the data that we already get from the ICE associations. We may look at doing spot checks in arena to ensure those that require to have a card have one, and we do require the participation of ICE associations in this solution. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of consultation. I did some consultation back in November of last year with the ICE associations after this was initially discussed with Council. At the time, both the Plan A, the regional solution, was discussed with the associations, as well as that full cost recovery and rebate program. But I've had recent meetings, late May, early June with the associations, and a lot of email exchanges, phone calls, etc. over the past 4 weeks or so. What I can say without a doubt from that feedback, Plan A, that regional collaborative solution to managing ice arenas, is by far the preferred solution to any others. And overall, that any Plan B solution, including the non-resident user fee, may result in significant reduction in non-resident users. And some of the impacts are up there on the screen, as well as detailed in depth in the report. Another request we received from the associations was if we were to implement a non-resident fee program, that we implement it in a phased approach. So don't go to a very high rate at the very beginning, go slow into it. The other thing that I'll give a lot of credit to these associations about as well is, of course, they're very concerned with the solutions that are before them, but what I can also say is they're also interested in finding solutions with us. And that's, we take that feedback very seriously. So again, very interested in that Plan A approach, the regional solution, but also to find other ideas and work with the City of St. John to find other ideas to make our rinks more sustainable, especially on the revenue side. And I'll get into that detail in a few minutes, but again, kudos to them for bringing solutions to the table. Up on the screen before you are some options to consider for what the non-resident user fee could be in increments of $50. And I show the recovery rates. Those recovery rates are relative to the operating deficit attributable to non-residents. Don't consider the capital costs at all, just the operating deficits. What we're and also up on the board there is a $70,000 figure for the implementation cost. So as I mentioned, that's currently an estimate. We're going to know at the end of this month the hard numbers for that. And again, some of those costs will be incurred in 2019 alone that won't be repeated if we do have to implement this plan in future years. What we're recommending to Council is a $200 plus HST non-resident user fee for the upcoming 2019-2020 season, and a $350 plus HST fee for next season. In both those scenarios, taxpayers of the City of St. John will continue to subsidize non-resident use of our facilities, both from an operating perspective and completely from a capital perspective. What I have up there as well, just for a comparison, is the $773 figure. That is what the City of Fredericton currently charges, plus HST, for what they charge for these non-resident fees. Fredericton charges fees that cover, I don't have the exact percentages, but they do recover costs for both operating and capital from non-residents. That's why their fee is a lot higher than what we're proposing for the next 2 years. What we're really talking about tonight is making our arenas more sustainable long term. We're running into some very difficult financial times for the City of St. John. We have arenas that are very old that need about $9 million of infrastructure investment as part of their deficit. We want to make sure these arenas are sustainable for the long term for the people that use these recreational facilities. We have to be able to afford them. So it's more than just finding the fair level of investment from both the taxpayers, our resident users, and our non-resident users. It's also about finding ways to reduce costs out of the operating budget and find other ways to find more revenue. So I have some examples up there on the board. So again, we're talking rates, we're talking cost cutting, and we're talking taking the excellent feedback from our associations to actually find more revenues. And some of these ideas from the associations we're going to be actually looking to implement for this coming season. That's how great they were. In terms of future work, so there's an error on the slide. We are asking tonight for the approval of the 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 non-resident user fees. But we do plan to come back to Council, currently planned for July 8th, 2019, to have recommendations before you for the hourly rates, because again, especially under the recreation card program, we'd still have subsidized rates at our arenas. And we also intend to use the template for how we're managing arenas, and again, both from a cost recovery perspective, but also from our cost mitigation perspective for other facilities in future years. But we'll be back to Council to talk about that at a future date. So in terms of the recommendations, there are two of them before you. Again, we purposely put number one as number one, that to continue to support fair and sustainable and tangible solutions that are before the Regional Service Commission, as we detail in the report. And again, if we do get that consensus, we may be back to council at a future date to recommend delaying Plan B implementation. And recommendation number 2 is to endorse that recreation card and user fee program and the proposed rates for the next 2 coming seasons. With that, open up for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Questions? I'm just going to clear a couple mics. I don't think City Manager, you had a question? Clear that off. Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, thank you, Jim, for the report. I'm just curious, do we have a rough estimate of what it would cost to implement this user fee program? And the counter that, how many players would it affect, do you think? Like, say at $200, are we going to get 300 players?
So for your first answer to your question, we're currently estimating a $70,000 cost to implement it for the first year. As I mentioned, some of those costs we won't be repeating year after year if we do have to continue the program, but a $70,000 estimate presently. In terms of how many it's going to affect, at this point, don't know the answer to that. We've assumed in the calculations a 25% reduction in non-resident use, but how much that's going to reduce, I don't know. And we detailed in the report, that's why we're recommending a phased approach to those non-resident user fees. You know, if we were to go to full cost recovery on capital and operating, we'd probably be closer to what Fredericton's charging for a year. We're recommending that lower $200 plus HST figure phased in year after year in order to identify what the impact's going to be and try to mitigate it.
Okay, I believe that we have to have people from outside pay for the fair share because the citizens of St. John are paying for everything. But what I don't want to do is spend $50,000 to collect $25,000, because in my world, that makes no sense whatsoever. But we still have to send a signal somehow that the outside users have to pay to play here to help our facilities, because we carry the whole load. And especially with capital costs, we pay the fiddler. But I don't know when you're going to get that answer, but sure. I think we have to seriously look at that. It doesn't make any business sense to spend 50 to get 20 or 25.
So we do have estimates up there for what we think the reduction may be, but this is an important year for us coming up for our arena facilities. This is going to identify potentially what our future demand is going to be for our facilities long term. And whether we go regional approach or City of St. John approach, we have to have a better sense of what our demand's going to be. Hopefully we come to that regional solution and we'll have continued sharing of those facilities throughout the region. But it's going to be a very important year for us. It's going to be a test year, and we will use this year, no matter what solution comes out with, and identify what the demand's going to be, and then we'll reassess what that demand is to make sure we have our supply that's adequate for that demand.
I remember when you came before that, and I asked the question, do we know the answer to these questions? How many players are actually playing hockey? Mm-hmm. How many rinks do we actually need? Do we need one more? Do we need 2 less? Mm-hmm. They're important questions that need to be answered for me to make a decision on this motion. But I am in favor of user fees for the outside players to help St. John.
So for this previous season, we had about 3,000 users of our arenas that were registered in different associations. Approximately a third of those, a little more than 1,000, were non-residents. The other 2,000 were residents. We do go back to Play SJ that identified a certain standard for population for the city. But again, it's important over the next year, 2 years to identify what that demand is. Ensure we work with our associations to ensure our facilities are used as much as possible. But at the end of the day, affordability for the City of St. John is going to be an important factor as to how many of these facilities we can sustain long term. So how many we're going to have, I don't know the answer to that, but this is going to be an important year to identify the demand.
Now, can you figure how many, and I know it's a hypothetical, because some people aren't going to just pay to play. It's just a fact of life. How will that, and I'm more concerned with how it will affect our local players and whether they continue to exist even. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So again, I hate talking about money all the time, but unfortunately that's what we have to talk about. At the end of the day, the number of arenas that provide this service to that portion of the community is going to depend on how much taxpayers can afford to invest. That's going to be the distinguishing factor. We need to identify that the user perspective, whether residents or non-residents are paying their fair share. We need to identify how much taxpayers think they can afford to invest in these facilities. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to affordability and what our long-term demand is, whether we have regional approach to this or not. That's going to impact how many of these facilities we're going to have. And obviously, if we have to change the number that we have, that's going to impact how many of these facilities are available to those users.
Now, the A, B teams, right, that travel all the time and cost a fortune for parents, is that affected drastically because if we implement the user fees or no, do you think? Like, are most of the players from outside of town for the A and B teams? Do you know?
Well, there are some teams and associations that have higher non-use than others. There are some of them that draw a lot of people from outside the city of St. John that have a higher percentage of non-use. So if there is a reduction in usage because of that fee, those will be impacted more than the other associations, yeah.
So, okay, I'm just saying, because, I mean, it affects hotels, tourists and all, because all these teams travel
Yep.
at that level. I guess I'm more concerned with the house league teams. The guy that, like how I grew up, we played in one rink. That's all we did. We grew up in one rink, Lancaster Rink. We never traveled. We had many more hockey players back then. But today, it's down drastically, the numbers, compared to when I played. And that's 50, 60 years ago, right? So, and now they travel everywhere. Like, I have a boy and he's in hockey. He travels to St. Stephen, Hampton, Sussex. They don't have a home rink anymore. So that's what I'm concerned about, the local player, how he will be affected. Because right now, the people that come from outside the city are kind of subsidizing the cost of that team to play, correct? With the ice, with them playing. They're dividing the fee, like LMHA divides the fee.
Well, the amount that people pay, people rent ice from the city of St. John, right? Whether in association, league, whatever. That money that we collect from the rentals of our facilities offset the cost to run the facilities, right? Wherever they draw their people from, that's kind of insignificant to that part of the cost model.
But if a team has, say, 20 players.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's down to 10 players because of the non-user fees.
Yeah.
That team will have to pay more to rent that ice. It's still divided. If it's $100, it's divided by 20, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm concerned about. And that's, I know it's not your responsibility, but it's a hypothetical. As a counselor, we have to ask ourselves that.
So, Counselor, I'm
What's
just going
gonna-
to call you there on
Yep.
your time. Everybody's
Okay,
lit up. We'll
thank
come
you,
back
ma'am.
around. So
Thank you,
just
Tim.
on a point of order here, folks, we're debating a recommendation that's not on the floor. Would somebody move the recommendation? Thank you. Thank you. It's on the floor. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Merrithew, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. And next up is Deputy Mayor.
Well, thank you. I have a few questions, but I may not get them all out right now. But I'm interested, just going back a little bit on what happens at the Regional Service Commission and how we got where we are today. And you have said a couple times that everybody still wants Plan A. And Plan A, if they could, that's the regional sort of group. So when we're talking about operating costs or deficits of the arenas, and in St. John's case it's LBR, are we also talking about the operating costs and the deficits for, say, Rothsay, Granby? I don't know if they even have one, but anyway, all of them, right?
Yes.
So there's how many altogether?
There would be
7?
10 that would be
10?
considered as part of this
Okay.
regional strategy.
So when that was discussed at the Regional Service Commission, were the operating budgets and approximately what the deficits have been in the past, was all that information given, like, to your working group from St. John and also from the other municipalities on what the costs were? I mean, I asked this question because I think, how can we, or any group, decide if they're going to take on those costs unless they know the cost? So do we have a breakdown? Because I can't tell you actually what the operating costs of any one of our arenas are.
Okay.
Or the deficit. I don't think we've ever had it broken down. So did they discuss that on your working committee?
Yes, we discussed it. Part of the challenge with this process has been obtaining some of the data we need to complete this process.
But did all the mayors have it all, like the Rossi mayor and Quispam, St. John mayor, everybody, all mayors have it?
I just
no.
step in. I mean, I'm the representative on the Funding Region Service Commission. I'd say, Deputy, the answer is no, because we couldn't even agree to fundamentally agreeing that we would share operating costs. That was the last failed motion, was to agree that we were going to share operating costs and then move on and invest in a consultant to figure out all of those elements. But when you can't even agree on
No.
the first step that you're going to share costs,
Okay.
that's why it failed.
But is there any way that if we step back for a step, and I'm just asking the question, can that information be obtained so all the mayors know what our costs are here in St. John? We know what they
Yeah,
do in Rossi,
sure.
Quispam, Grand Bay.
What I can tell you with certainty on the working group, every time I was asked for data, I provided it,
Okay.
whether it's cost information or usage information.
But not everybody at right now, like when they say to me they didn't have all the information on that, I'm checking that out. I want to know, so I guess they didn't really have all that information yet. Yeah.
No.
The Deputy Commissioner could speak to the sharing of data by the other folks on the working group. I mean, I think that's
Did
perhaps.
everybody share the information?
We talked about the information. Part of the challenge has been is that we didn't have regional consensus until February of this year to provide all the data to go into the model. That was part of the
So
challenge.
it's not ever been really all put in there.
We didn't have regional consensus. All 5 municipalities agreed to provide all the data we need to come up with this model. That's been part of the challenge. The other challenge, and again, and that's why we talk about the applicable operating deficits. We completely understand that how we finance things might be different than Rossi, Quispam, Granby, Westfield. The Qplex is a huge facility that just doesn't have an arena in it. It has other things like pools, community centers, et cetera. That's why we have it in our proposal to the commission, that it should be the applicable costs. Let's get
Yeah,
agreement on
okay,
these principles, and then we, if we need to hire a consultant to bring all that financial data out, all the usage data out, and understand what the consistent data is between us. But we've been able to
Okay.
do that at
But
this
that's
point.
sort of not all completed yet.
It is not all completed, no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
there has not been a recommendation to bring that help on board.
Okay, and just a couple other major questions. Like the Lancaster Minor Hockey Association apparently has some agreement with Grand Bay Westfield. Is that being accepted here if we go forward on the non-user fees? And I guess I've been told that the agreement is that they don't have to pay the non-resident user fees because they had an agreement over time that Lancaster Minor Hockey Association has kids from St. John and kids from Grand Bay. And there's
Yeah.
100 and some kids from Grand Bay.
Well, it's not my place to comment on what Lancaster Minor might have with another municipality. What I can say is that there's no agreement for the city of St. John
So
for
if
it.
we implement number 2, the recreation card, a non-resident user fee, then that would not play a role. They would have to pay fees in Grand Bay. And I guess if Grand Bay decides to put a user fee, then we would have to pay fees for our kids in St. John to go to Grand Bay.
Well, so again, the first step is St. John, making one of two decisions, right? And yes, if you're a member of Lancaster Minor, another association that rents ice from the city of St. John, non-residents in those associations would have to pay that non-resident user fee if council supports it.
Yeah, if
If council supports it.
If
Now,
they want to go to our rink.
Correct, yeah. Now, it's certainly conceivable that over next year, year or two later, other municipalities start doing the same thing. And what I suggest to you then is we're essentially going back to Plan A. We're going back to a situation where the taxpayers in a municipality are subsidizing the use of their users of their facilities. That's exactly what we're proposing as Plan A. So certainly it could evolve over time that we apply non-resident user fees, Grand Bay Westfield does, Rossi, Quispam Sis. We're all paying $70,000 or some figure to help us administer this very burdensome, very difficult process. When, as an alternative, we just agree to principles like this. We fund our own residents that use regional arenas, and that would replace the need for all those types of user fees.
Okay, but there is a possibility, and I think you've said it, but I want to say it, so I'm saying it.
Sure.
Because you add a lot of words. So the non-resident user fee, if we put that in place for effective this fall, then Rossi, Quispam, and Grand Bay Westfield could do the same thing.
Sure.
And they could either have the same costs or they could have a different cost.
Sure.
So then that would mean for all the kids in all the region here, there would be a big added cost for St. John kids too.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, Deputy. You're
Okay, I'll come back. I'll put
double.
my light back on.
I gave you double time, so there you go.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Strobridge.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tim, at what rate for public information, because a lot of people don't read the kits, they're only getting what they hear us talk about, and there's a whole lot more. So what is the subsidization rate that taxpayers, citizens of St. John, are paying for non-residents?
Sure. So it's approximately $380,000 a year for the operating costs of our facilities.
$380,000 a year.
Annually.
Annually.
Yeah, for the operating costs, not
Operating.
considering any capital investment in our facilities.
So that's a lot of money. We could do a lot with that. I'm sure everyone here would know that. So $380,000 a year is what taxpayers of the city of St. John are subsidizing for non-residents to come in and use their facilities that they're paying the bills on.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, I just want to make sure that point is driven home. Because that's what all of us are subsidizing as taxpayers of the city of St. John. Every single one of us when it comes to this file. And I think that's a very important point that that people need to hear loud and clear. You had also stated about, in the beginning, at least in the first year, if we do this, approximate $70,000 to get it rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in today's digital age, everything can be done pretty much by email. There's no need to print cards off anymore. There's no need for any of that. Everything can be sent by email, and if you want to have a hard copy in your pocket, you can print it off yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're going to be doing? Is that what you foresee taking place?
Well, we still want the physical cards to be provided, because if we do decide to do spot checks in our arenas to make sure people have the cards, we want to be able to physically see them.
Okay, I can understand that, but
Yeah.
I mean, hockey players aren't going to have those in their pockets when they're out on the ice anyway.
No, that's right.
So, I mean, I don't know if we're expecting coaching staff to have it all on file and you can pull it out and, oh yeah, number 99, this is his card. I
Yeah.
don't know, I think that might be a little overkill,
Okay.
you know? That's just my thought on it. My last comment on it was, in the tables that you provided here, you said that what you were proposing in the beginning was $200, and then the following year it would go up to $350.
Correct.
But that still doesn't make up for the subsidization that
No.
taxpayers in St. John are paying.
Correct. It doesn't cover complete operating deficits associated with non-resident use, and doesn't cover any recovery of capital investments.
So what number do we have to get to achieve that?
Well, so for operating deficits, it's approximately $382 annually. The capital cost is a big question mark, and that's why we did put some information in the report about it. We're in the process now of doing a condition assessment on our 4 civic arenas. We did one for the LBR last year. We'll have better information this year as to the long-term capital investments of those arenas. We also have to identify what our long-term demand is going to be, either the regional solution or our own solution, to identify how many rinks we do need in the city to support the demand. And then we'll have a better sense at that point as to, what our long-term capital investments are going to need to be in our existing facilities and what we do into the future, whether we replace them or upgrade them. So long short of it, I don't know what the capital investment is. The approximate infrastructure deficit on the 9 arenas is approximately $9 million. That's what we should be spending on capital investment right now in those 9 arenas.
Okay, so I'm just questioning, I understand that we want to start out low so people don't end up with rate shock. But if your tables say, in 2021, you're thinking if council goes this way, or Plan A doesn't happen, $350, but in your cost recovery, that's only 92%. We need to go up to 382 for 100%
Correct.
recovery in your tables.
Correct.
So why don't we do 200 this year and then next year just go 382?
That's why we're before council, is to get that support for those two numbers this evening.
Yeah, because I'm thinking 350 to 382, what's another $32? You know, that's what it seemed like to me if it was something that I had to pay. Because if we want to get 100% recovery, and that's only for operating, right? That's not for capital.
Correct.
Right, okay.
So, Councillor, can I just call you there and we'll come back around? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Merrithew. Sorry, Councillor Merrithew, there you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, Tim, thank you. It's a tough file. You've done a great presentation on this. Thank you very kindly for that. I think I want to. I just want to regurgitate some of what we know here. Not totally for council, because I know council's read the package, but for people in the audience and people watching. Okay. So what we first did is we went to a regional group and said, look, we know that there's 30+% of our ranks are used by outsiders. And we wonder if we can get together for a fair regional solution. And so what we said is that every rink in the region, 10 you mentioned, Tim,
Correct.
run a deficit.
Yes.
Let's put all those deficits in a pot. Let's divide it by users, okay?
Yep.
And that's what everyone will pay.
Yes.
And we didn't take capital into account,
Correct.
which I think we should. So that seems to me a fair solution, all right? So you're telling me that not only did the outlying areas not like that idea, that some of them we couldn't even get proper data from.
Well, again, to be fair, we as City of St. John, we've been before council about this. It's important after a year and a half to at least agree on principles as to what this cost sharing formula will look like. Mm-hmm. We definitely agreed with the fact that regionally we need to work on that data, and so we agreed with the fact that we need to get some help to collect that data to fill in that formula, which we'll all agree to. But yeah, we've been working at, it's been a year and a half working towards it, and unfortunately, again, I was before council at the end of March. There are other solutions on the table, but staff's recommendation was they weren't tangible. They didn't lead to an outcome at this point in time.
All right, so we don't have an agreement, therefore we have to go in our own direction. And I appreciate, and I agree with you, that the option A should be the first choice, that we all work together for a fair and regional solution. But it doesn't seem that the neighbors want to do that. We've got to choose another option. I don't think that we should continue to subsidize those playing in our rinks that don't live in our city. It's costing taxpayers money. It's cost them money for decades. And so I'm going to support your recommendation. The only thing I will say to council, though, is that when I look what the city of Fredericton's doing, and I'll tell council right now, the city of Fredericton's financial books are the best financial books of the 3 major cities in the province. And I'll tell you why, because they do stuff like this, and they've done it for years. They've saved for projects, okay? They've taken this kind of concept, and they were to the solution early, and to the solution with full cost recovery, including capital. That's why we have a debt that's massively more than Fredericton. This is a good solution. I don't think it goes far enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just quickly, if I could, just on that point. So in the case of Fredericton as well, Fredericton actually has agreements with local service districts around them. Some. And so this $773 are for the participants from LSDs that didn't come to an agreement.
Yeah, for those that wouldn't join the fair strategy.
Exactly, yeah. I just want that point to be made.
Yep, I understand. Thank you, Tim.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tim, the little less than $1 million that we put in our rinks every year, the $380,000 that subsidizes the non-residents and the $600,000, give or take, does that include the youth subsidy that we also give to youth associations?
Yes, it does. So in the operating deficit, identified what our budgeted revenues are, and then it basically took off $172,000 from that. So yes, that $172,000 plus everything else the taxpayers invest in amounts to that $1 million, give or take a year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Because it refers to this, but also goes to the presentation we're going to see in a couple of weeks, but on rates. But I think the question around youth from the city of St. John and their access to ice. For this councillor, other than your standard inflation, I would want to see rates for the youth of St. John stay where it's at, make sure the subsidies continue. I really want to keep this focused on the non-resident portion of the subsidies that we're giving out to users that aren't just youth, but adults from outside of the city as well. When I went to that meeting at the library there a few weeks back, a lot of passionate volunteers in the room. But one of the things that when I left, that left me heartened was, and for council's benefit, there were a lot of volunteers who work in ice associations outside of the city of St. John who are asking our staff, what can they do to help support Plan A? So it's not just the city of St. John and us talking about it. There are many volunteers who are working with ice associations who are willing to go back and have conversations like this in their own municipalities as well. So that left me quite heartened. For Councillor Armstrong's benefit, we don't have house leagues anymore. We have A, B, and C teams, and if you're playing on a C team, it's as competitive as A and B. You're traveling to St. Stephen, Sussex. You get to ride the boat to Grand Manan for hockey in the coldest rink in the world. But those C teams play really, really hard, and so how would this affect them? They're traveling. All the players are traveling. That's kind of the reality of today's minor hockey. And I really appreciate the last conversation I had was a $400 non-resident card, and I think the phased approach is very important. As much as we are focused on the users from the city of St. John, I think it does show that we're not empathetic to those families who live outside of the city of St. John but don't control their own local councils. So not to have that rate shock in the first year and to help continue the conversation and maybe not push them all out right away. So I really do appreciate that. And I'll finish with this question, Tim. And really comes the conversation the deputy brought up Lancaster. Yes, we want a regional approach. But like Fredericton, if one municipality decided to say, look, St. John, we want to work with you on this, would we, apart from the regional strategy that we're still working on, if Grand Bay Westfield said, yes, we want to work on something because we share a lot, would we be open to that?
Absolutely.
And is there a mathematical way to make that fit? Have you guys looked at that yet?
Yes. Yeah, in fact, again, I have that relationship with my counterparts to other municipalities, and I've been having them. And if there's an opportunity for us to collaborate sub-regionally with Granby Westfield or another municipality, staff would be fully supportive of that approach.
Fantastic. Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks,
Okay,
Tim.
thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a great, I appreciate Councillor Sullivan's statement there and our question there. I was going to ask the same thing. That's an important one to note, that is still an option for our regional municipalities to step up. And my disappointment lies with the regional municipalities for not being willing to step up in the first place, to stand up for their taxpayers and make sure that they're not getting hit with this, because we're left with no other options. We know we need to make a decision on this. So just a couple of questions. Tim, outside of Fredericton, were any other municipalities looked at in comparison as to how things worked?
Sure. So Town of Sussex has a full cost recovery and rebate program, so our option one. It's actually the city of Nanaimo that I found with the help of the working committee, so in BC, which has a very similar to model, which is what St. John's proposing. In their case, they had, I think it was ball fields, so it's been a couple months I looked at it, but it was a similar situation where they had the city of Nanaimo, a number of districts around it. They all, again, similar to St. John, we all have recreational facilities, i.e. arenas. And in that case there, they, again, identified the usage, what the costs are to provide service, operating maintenance, and then they shared that deficit among them. So there's a working model, and this, you can look it up, City of Nanaimo, that's exactly the same solution that the City of St. John's proposing for the region. So Fredericton, Sussex, Nanaimo, and there's other variances of that too. Yeah.
I think, I'm sure I share sentiment with other councillors here in terms of just us implementing this and everyone runs back to their towns to use the arenas there. I know there's certain occupancy issues, obviously, that they face. Any examples where it's gone poorly, where that's happened?
So again, the closest is the City of Fredericton, obviously. And so the City of Fredericton has been implementing non-resident user fees for over 12 years. It's been longer than that. In about 2007-ish, they were only charging $34.50 per year. They identified that wasn't covered in operating deficits. They identified, similar to City of St. John, they were coming up on the need to replace facilities, which they have awesome ones in Fredericton now. And so they upped it to $300 and something, which eventually went up to $773. I talked to the City of Fredericton, their staff. Obviously, some decline, but it wasn't dramatic. The City of Hamilton, it was definitely a different story on that. I think the lessons learned from that, which I think we've been doing, is you got to talk about this for a long time. You got to try to find other solutions around it. And if you're going to go with an alternate solution like non-resident user fees, you got to start talking about it a long time before you do it. And again, we brought this up with council last October, had a meeting with the associations in November that we're looking at doing some form of this. And here we are now. And again, I do want to stress council of this too. Implementing this for this coming season, we need to get on this and continue to implement it. But certainly, City of Fredericton was a great example. City of Hamilton didn't go so well initially.
It kind of leads into my next question. Let's say this gets pushed today. How does it impact the timeline? What's the, if we need the revenue this coming season,
Yep.
and that gets pushed today, are we missing the deadline?
It's so again, I'll provide a little context here. We provided the data May 1st, 2019 for a reason. It was very critical. Number one is we wanted to give 2 more shots for the Regional Service Commission to come to an agreement. Let's give it a hard try here. So we recommend to council, let's put this off till May the 1st. We have to get on this. We're going to be looking to engage this consulting services in early July, late June. Pushing that any farther is going to be difficult to implement for this coming season. I'm not going to say impossible, but very difficult.
Okay. Can you just quickly walk me through the enforcement process?
Sure.
Or the proposed enforcement process?
Sure.
And for the folks in the room as well? And the thousands of viewers at home too?
Sure. So what we're going to be doing, I think I have the right slide up here. So the most important thing that we're going to be doing is, we're going to have our own database essentially of users. And we're asking the associations to allow the participants that register with them to provide that information to the City of St. John. So we're going to know what city residents belong to associations that rent ice from us. We're going to know those that either don't declare where they live or declare where they live outside of St. John. We'll have that database for this coming season. We're going to continue, which the associations have been doing for years, provide their registration information towards the end of November. We're going to keep that. And then we're going to cross-reference against what we have for data and what they have for data, and make sure it's the same. If it's not, again, we may look at doing spot checks in Arena if we do find that there's some issues and some variances there. And at the end of the day, we are going to have those non-participants pay one way or the other when we identify them. And we may look at having to tag that cost onto the association's bill at the end of the year, which we would then resolve if the participant pays a non-resident user fee. So that's how we're planning to roll it out for this coming season. It's pretty much the same as the Fredericton did last year. They just went to recreation cards last year. They had user fees for a long time, and they were in kind of similar situation as we are now. But coming into next season, which they're doing this season, the additional step that we're going to be looking at doing is making it a requirement that the associations have the participants obtain this recreation card before they register for the associations. So that's a plan we'd be planning to implement for next season. All those combined, we're going to do our best to ensure that non-residents are paying. It's not perfect. I don't want to give council the wrong impression here, and that's why I've been so focused on Plan A and recommending Plan A, because Plan B is not going to be easy to implement. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be hard. But at the end of the day, you've only got so many choices. The City of St. John is going to be faced with a very difficult financial decisions in a couple of years' time in 2021. And one way to do it is to find a more fair way to recover the cost of recreational facilities. It's not going to be easy, but those are the ways we're going to try to make sure it works.
Thanks. And that's about it for my questions. But I think the biggest thing is I hope this is seen as a call to action for our regional municipalities to step up and start paying their fair share on this. I mean, we're at the end of the road on this one. And if we can't come together on something as small as rinks, I think we've got a long road ahead of us in terms of regional cooperation. So I really hope that this starts to spur some form of regional cooperation. And I guess the point I would stress is that if this gets tabled today, we really lose a chance at a huge section of the return that we can anticipate from the non-resident user fee. And I think on top of that, it really shows, I think, our willingness as a council to make these tough financial decisions that we're going to be faced with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. A lot of my questions have already been asked, but I guess, everybody wants Plan A. I think that Plan B will end up being a disaster. And I'll tell you why. Because one of the things that we don't talk about is why Campbellton failed and Fredericton didn't, okay? And when all of your rinks are owned by one municipality, you can't fail, all right? But if there's options outside your municipality, you can fail. You can fail really big time. Now, you say in the report that you assume 25% reduction in non-resident users. Mm-hmm. I heard as many as 37%. I've also heard that if St. John does this, Granby, Rossay, Quispam, you name it, St. George, St. Andrews, they're all going to do it. Now, if you think about that concept, mm-hmm. okay, and you have a child in hockey in St. John, okay, and to Councillor Sullivan's comment, they all travel. Mm-hmm. Every time they travel, they're going to be playing in somebody else's backyard.
Right.
So not only are the users from other areas going to pay more in St. John users are going to pay more in other areas.
Yep.
Okay? That almost gets to be a nightmare when you think about it, because then you bring in hockey tournaments. Now you say that St. John's saying, oh no, if you're in a hockey tournament, you're not going to have to pay.
Correct.
Okay. But let's say that people are so used to traveling around that they decide to say, you know what, we're going to have a hockey tournament. We need 3 ice surfaces, and not one of them is going to be in St. John. Mm-hmm. Right? Then you have to say, oh, okay, well, what's that mean for our economic situation? So to me, it's like a lot of unanswered questions. I totally, absolutely agree that we need help from outlying areas to pay our bills. Absolutely. I mean, they're on our roads, using our water system, sewage, rinks, everything. I absolutely agree. What I don't want to do, to Councillor Armstrong's comment, is I don't want to turn around and say, we're going to do this because it's the only way to do it, when everybody knows Plan A is the way to do it, and then we lose a lot of revenue that we're gaining right now because we outpriced ourselves. And there is, unlike Fredericton, rinks just down the street. Okay? So, I mean, Fredericton's successful because nobody else has a rink.
Okay.
I just want to make that clear. Campbellton, on the other hand, tried to do it, and everybody went to Dalhousie.
Okay.
Okay, and that was, like you put it, a bad situation.
Okay.
So, you know, I know that we're under a time restraint here, okay, but I really think that when you're talking something this big, we need to hear all sides of it, and I think, unlike Councillor Hickey, the opposite to, I think tabling it actually is a responsible thing to do, to find out exactly what the consequences are of Plan B, and it also gives everybody a chance to reflect on Plan A. Because I have no doubt in my mind that if this comes back in 2 weeks' time or whatever, it's
Yep.
going to go through. But I also think that we need the answers to the questions
So-
before it goes through.
So I can answer those right now for you.
You can?
Yep.
Okay.
So if, let's just say, for example, we lose full 37% of usage, no non-residents play in the City of St. John rinks anymore. So the first question that you have to ask is, where are they going to play? Because the other rinks around us don't have a lot of extra capacity. So that's the first question to answer. And the number two, which when I answered Councillor Armstrong's question, it's the same answer. This is going to be a pivotal year for us, whether, again, it's Plan A or Plan B, hopefully Plan A. But if it's Plan B and that becomes our new norm, we're going to look at our demand in our arenas, and we'll have to identify again what our supply long term is going to be for the City of St. John. And any change in demand will obviously have an impact on users, or change in the supply of arenas will have an impact on users. It'll also have an impact on our tax base as well. So if there's a reduction in the number of arenas, there'll be a reduction in the operating subsidy that's paid by our residents. Again, I don't want to, I don't want to tell council not to listen to all sides of the story, but I mean, I had this meeting in November last year with the associations. I think it was like a 3 or 4 hour meeting, if I remember. Tried to obtain all the input I can get. Very similar meeting just a few weeks ago at the end of May. Try to get as much input as I can as well. I think I did a relatively okay job at identifying that context in the report as well. And again, that's kind of the worst case scenario, I guess, as you just asked.
So, I guess, how much capacity do the outside rinks have? Like the Centrum, how much free ice time's out there now?
Sorry, where?
Grand Bay Centrum.
Well, so that's been part of the issue, I guess, again, is obtaining that usage data. But I've spoken with one association that plays almost 100% outside of the City of St. John, and there's no prime time ice left for them to choose in other arenas. The arenas around us are used as much, if not more, than ours.
Okay, so we know that our arenas are utilized about 70%.
Well,
Our four.
correct.
Okay.
So again, do you want to provide a little context there? So during a prime time ice, which again, every rink is not used very often daytimes. During a prime time, which is evening weekdays as well as on weekends, it's closer to 87% utilization. But we still got to do a better job at filling that, and we got to do a better job of filling our non-prime time rates. Or if rinks aren't being used very much in non-prime, we mitigate our costs by controlling some of the costs that go into it. But at the end of the day, our prime time usage is about 87%.
So tell me something. Now, if I rent ice from say, I don't know, pick one, the Gorman Arena, okay, and I want it for Friday morning, 9 o'clock. Thursday afternoon, I call you and I say, I don't need that ice. Do I still have to pay for it?
Yes, you do.
You have to pay
We
for
have a 5-day cancellation policy right now. And in fact, one of the recommendations that the associations actually made was to not allow any cancellations once somebody's booked it.
Yeah.
So once you book it, it's yours. If you don't want to use it anymore, you have to find somebody else to use it. And this is not uncommon in the region. St. John, I think, is pretty much the only municipality around that allows people to cancel up to 5 days in advance.
Okay.
Councillor, I'm just going to call you there. We got eight lights lit up, and that was 7 minutes. So we got another hour here if we keep going at this rate. So I'll come back around for
Thank you, Your Worship.
round two. Thank you. I'm going to go to councillors first, folks that have not spoken yet. Okay, so Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not a huge fan of this. sadly, it might be the best option we have, but I really don't like double dipping. I don't like tolls on roads that you already paid for in the first place. So why you paying to drive on it? I don't like stuff like that. This seems just something like that, which I really don't like. And I like the global mentality. Like, we build something and, you know, everybody can use it, you know, the same. So, well, that's half of what we're living in, so that's true. But anyway, so if we have 2,000 hockey players, because you said about 1/3 is, so about 2,000 or whatever hockey players, how many rinks is that? How many rinks do those hockey players need?
So, so to answer your question first, that there is no answer to that question. At the end of the day, you know, it's, you know, if people want very convenient ice times, you have a lot of ice. But at the end of the day, it's going to cost money to run those facilities. In Play SJ, we talked about a standard of 1 to 20,000 residents. That's a standard that was used in Play SJ. Just a couple of your comments there about, you know, where the money is coming from. So the $1 million approximately that our taxpayers invest in these arenas, we're simply talking about replacing the 37% of that taxpayer subsidization. Instead of our taxpayers paying for it, it's the users from outside the city of St. John. And in terms of availability of ice, if somebody wants to rent ice from the city of St. John, we'll rent it to them.
So will we do that for everything then?
Well, yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to rent a facility from us, you're allowed to. We'll welcome you.
Yeah, are we going to do user fees for baseball fields? And,
Well.
you know, if you want to go to the playground, you're going to do a user fee for that?
That conversation's coming up, Counselor, in fall budget.
I'm just saying, like, you know, like, for 1 to 20, that's 3 rinks, give or take.
Yes.
3.5.
3.5.
So we have, what, 5?
Correct. Without the harbor station, yeah.
And, well, I suppose the bigger question is whether we actually need, you know, 5 rinks or 3 rinks or whatever. It all depends on how much we can afford anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you want to get out the credit card and put it on the credit card every year, it really depends on how much we can afford. So we can only afford 1 rink. Maybe we should only have 1 rink. That's my comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Councillor Reardon, I think that's your first time. Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Tim, for the report. Listen, I agree with Councillor Casey. I'd love to have rinks and have everyone come. And if we had the money, it's the maintenance of them, of course, that's our issue for us. So how would, if we applied Play SJ to this, how would that impact what's going on here as well? And we ended up with the 3.5 rinks. And can Harbor Station be part of that? Why is Harbor Station sort of not part of that? Only because it's a regional facility?
Yeah, so the Harbor Station is part of the Regional Facility Commission model. There's already an avenue in place to capture regional contributions to that facility.
So how much downtime of ice would they have? How much is their ice? You don't know what their ice time would be used at?
No.
So if our prime time's only being used at 87%, that's absolutely not good enough. What would the rink hours be, regular rink hours? Like, when my brothers played hockey, Dad was up at like 5.
Yeah.
Is that the case? Do the rinks open at 5?
So right now, the rinks only open in St. John at 7 a.m.
Okay.
Because we are having a challenge getting enough demand at that time. One of the discussions, again, great conversation with the associations, is talking about having them use the ice earlier on in the morning. So we are looking at the option potentially at opening the rinks earlier. But at the end of the day, it's all about, you got to have enough revenue coming in to cover those costs and then some. So we'll have to review that. But I guess to answer your question, right now we open the rinks every day at 7 a.m. and they close at 11 p.m. midnight, depending on it's weekdays or weekends. Your prime times are 4 p.m. till 11 p.m. on weekdays, all days on weekends.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is if your rinks were open a little bit longer, could you reduce the number of rinks and increase the hours in a rink and get around it that way?
That's one of the options, yeah.
Councillor, I think the city manager just wanted to jump in for a
Yeah.
second.
Oh,
perhaps,
certainly.
Just on that point, Counselor, we have committed within our 2019 work plan to take a look at our arenas, the number of them we have compared to usage rates, et cetera. It is conceivable that we will be coming back to council with a reduction in the number of rinks or a reduction in hours for the rinks or something along that line, and it will be based on usage fee or on usage rates.
Okay, sounds good. And are our rinks competitively priced
Yes.
for,
Yeah. And so what I'll be doing as well, which I do every time, is when I come in July 8th, I'll be showing council what the competitive rates are around us.
okay. I did like the recommendations from the association. I thought they had a lot of good recommendations, and I'd like to see those implemented as well. And so I guess at the end of the day, Plan A is not dead per se, because it could be put together piecemeal if we had municipalities that were interested in going that route. And so, yeah, I guess that's it for me. It's a struggle to because like I say, I would like to have I want people coming into St. John, and but at the end of the day, is how can we afford to maintain facilities that we, at the end of the day, may not need that number of facilities. So I guess it's trying to balance that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norton, first up.
Thanks, Your Worship. Tim, thanks for your work on this one. You've been working this file for a millennia now, so it's been a while. In terms of timelines regarding the recommendations, I don't know if the common clerk has them up there right now. In terms of timeline for the recommendations, what's not those recommendations, I guess the improvements, the efficiencies, John, sorry, I apologize.
I'm doing that one there.
Thank you.
All right.
The other John. Tim, what's the timeline for putting all those pieces of the puzzle in place? If
Sure.
you were to look at something like that.
Absolutely. So just going down the list, so obviously the energy saving safety initiatives we've already been doing.
Sure.
Over the year, those are implemented. The staffing to demand initiative, I actually brought a report into council about this time last year. We started it last year. We started essentially browning out times where ranks are used not very much or low. We're going to do that even further this coming season. We're changing our shift structure, and we're also going further with, again, browning out times when the rinks are in high demand. So we're doing that now. The long-term arena supply plan, again, first approach is it a regional approach or is it our own? That's going to impact demand, and we'll look into our long-term supply plan along with our for affordability. Some of the ideas from the associations to prevent cancellations. Pretty certain July 8th we'll be coming in with the recommendations for changes to ICE allocation policy. That first one will be in there. We will be preventing cancellations. The early weekday bookings, we are exploring implementing that for this coming season, not 100% sure yet. The transparent schedules throughout season, we just have a question with our legal department to make sure we can identify. We already have, it's called ePlay SJ, where we have all our schedules available for the public to view so they know when our ranks are booked. The step that the associations wanted to see is who's booking them. So if they wanted to do some changes between them. So we're just checking with legal. We'll likely be implementing that for this coming season. The earlier season booking deadline, we won't be looking at that till next year because we should be doing it now this time of year. We do that at the end of August every year. We'll be moving that up to May. And the reason for that is we'll get the season set for the upcoming year well in advance. And so all the associations would have several months to look at where the gaps are in available ice and fill in the rest of the gaps to help book more time.
Sorry.
And then the other two, collaborate on arena schedules, probably next year for that one. And then the advertising and arena naming rights, something we'll have to look at in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
The kids at the back are doing a great job, by the way, so you're holding in
I
there.
couldn't even tell they were there.
Yeah,
so.
I couldn't even tell. Last week at school, and you guys are doing a great job, so. Don't worry, you have 9 hours to go, so keep it up. You'll be okay. We got water up here. With Tim, with that, like, if you were to assess all the recommendations in terms of cost savings potential, are you able to apply a dollar figure to that? And I'm just talking back in the envelope. I know that puts you in a difficult spot, but you've done difficult work up till now.
Yeah, so the hard savings that we implemented last season with the staffing to demand, again, this is pure take money out of the budget, was $35,000. This coming season, we're going to look at a further hard savings of a further $30,000 in savings. The rest of the labor savings is going to be opportunity costs. So the staffing that would normally be in a rink at certain times of the day, they'll be available to do enhanced level of service in other parts of Parks and Recreation or outside of Parks and Recreation. So that's more of an opportunity there rather than a hard savings. But we will be identifying all those hard and, again, I'll call them light green and the light green colors. The labor savings will be coming off of our arena budget, which will ultimately reduce the deficit of those arenas. Again, it's all about sustainability here. We're trying to make sure these important recreation facilities are available for the future, and we have to do all these things in order to do that, and then some.
Absolutely. No, I agree with this sustainability comment. Like, that's one of the concerns I have, on top of that. I mean, we want to increase growth, but with this one, I'm just wondering if we're just going to, instead of increasing growth, we talk about that all the time, are we going to grow divisiveness? That's a real question that we have to grapple with. We increase growth, we grow divisiveness. At the same time, we're talking about regional collaboration in a greater St. John. And I'm worried that the messaging that can come across with this is that we can, it's not this sentiment for the folks around here, but at the same time, it can be seen in the public domain that what we're doing is we're using this to get back to those that don't want to play ball. And so we've got to be very careful. Tim, let me ask you this, is this somewhat, does council have something to own, this councillor included, is this somewhat our responsibility in the fact of what we haven't done is we haven't acted on Play SJ quickly enough? Like, we talked about quickly when Play SJ was adopted that we would rationalize our infrastructure, and that's become very cliche as well, but so hasn't cost capture, and so hasn't all those other buzzwords. But is this a result of the fact that we haven't been able to act on Play SJ quickly enough, and perhaps we should have? If we did, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation.
So in terms of implementation of Play SJ generally, we have done a lot. We've closed 20 playgrounds throughout the city of St. John.
But rink specifically.
So rink specifically, there are a few recommendations in Play SJ. One of them is specific to a regional approach to arenas. We believe as staff that before we make a decision on impacting the supply of these arenas, we have to give it the best try we can, and I'm sure council feels the same way, to make sure that the regional solution is not one that's attainable. That's a very important decision, and we didn't feel as staff we wanted to rush into making that supply change. We're coming up to it, obviously now, but I'd say it's in steps. Step one, which is in Play SJ, to explore regional collaboration. Once that's identified, whatever the solution is going to be, then we move to our supply opportunity. So it's just a sequencing thing.
I think, and speaking of sequence, I'm very happy to see that in that sequence is what we're looking for, is we're obviously looking for a collaborative approach. We haven't closed the door on that.
Absolutely.
I think it's good to keep that open.
Yep.
At the same time, as a counselor, you're compelled to vote with your conscience and what you hear from stakeholders and staff. I've got concern, for this counselor sometimes, the rising costs of everything is a concern for me. Like, I want to be in a position where we're no longer subsidizing billionaires and not passing on the cost to youth hockey. That's where I want to be. And I don't see that moving us in that direction. I see right now, I see an appetite to get that regional collaborative approach that we're talking about, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I've also seen council open up more time for sober second thought to get a deal done. And for me, this is one of those instances where it's appropriate to ask for a little bit more time to get the deal done before youth minor hockey and our people, our Greater St. John, the folks that live, work, and play here, and our citizens as well, citizens of Greater St. John have to pay that share. If there's more time to be had, now's the time to take advantage of that opportunity. I would only say this. Before you cast your vote, up until the 11th hour, which is when most things happen, of course, I haven't seen as many emails or phone calls on this issue until now. In fact, I'll be completely honest. My email on this issue has been from about one person. Literally two. And it's obviously impacting more than that. But that's it. It has not crossed my... I've seen more on the most benign issues. On this one, it hasn't. But obviously, there's been an awakening of some sort. And if there's time to bring people to the table that have said that they're willing to go ahead to their respective councils and look for a solution for this, now's the time to take advantage of that appetite to look for that solution and table it for just a few more weeks, a month, to see if we can get something else done. I think we can afford people that
Councilor, I'm just going to call you on time.
Thank you, Worship.
It's
That's it.
10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, folks, if we keep up at this rate, we're going to have a meeting on one item tonight. So pick your favorite question, one question.
Point of order, sir.
Yep.
We have a 3-minute rule that has been
Right.
passed by this council, and I'd like to see it enforced, please.
Okay.
It's warm in here,
Yep.
okay? And 7 and 8 minutes is twice what the rule that we passed is.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Okay, thank you. Who has not spoken yet? Everyone has spoken. Deputy Mayor, you're on the clock.
You just speak one word answer. The Lord Beaverbrook Rink, are they on board with this? They have to charge the non-residents? Yes or no? Sorry.
The Lord River does not need to charge the fee. The City of St. John will charge the fee.
Not the rink then?
Correct.
Their board doesn't have anything to do with it?
Well, they do have something to do with it, but the City of St. John will be charging the fee.
Okay. The next question is Pro Kids.
Mhm.
Are they going to be paying for non-resident fees for the kids from Rossay, Quispam, Greenway? They're all involved in it. They all can qualify for Pro Kids. So can they do that? Just ask no. Yes. I'm sorry, but I gotta get my
If they
timing.
meet the financial
Yeah, they have to
difficulties
meet
of
right
Pro
here.
Kids,
So we could
they-
end up paying money from Pro Kids to pay non-resident user fees.
I wish there were one-word answers. So the money from Pro Kids, don't forget, it's not from, the City of St. John invests in the operating budgets, but the money comes from other sources.
Yeah, but we
No,
all pay into
In
it.
fairness, Deputy, some of these
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
aren't yes or no
No,
answers.
I know,
I asked you to
but they-
pick one, or one
oh,
more,
okay.
please.
Given the knowledge I have from some of the hockey groups, and I do not have a vested interest in minor hockey, I understand that many of the teams, 50% of the players are from St. John and 50% are non-resident kids. My fear is that for whatever reason, because of these fees and because of the difficulties, they just will end up not playing hockey, and that will be a shame for kids, because hockey does many things for kids. It's just not playing hockey. So because of that, and because of the time, I'm asking, and you, Your Worship, are the representative on the RSC, the Regional Service Commission, and is there any way, if we took another week and all of the mayors met, even if you met without the LSD and had a separate arrangement for them, could we take another week and ask them if they come together? I mean, can this work? Because it's going to be very difficult for all of us, because tonight we're here saying it's the fault of the other municipalities. And that's our opinion. they're sitting home saying it's the fault of St. John. So I know that because they've all talked to me about it. So, you know, it's a very difficult thing, and I know you've worked very hard on this and all that. But is there some way that we can do
So I
it
think
over?
that was a question to me. I mean, the recommendation clearly says that the door is still open for the other municipalities to come back to the table. They should do that over the next week. My opinion is we should pass this recommendation tonight. We've spent 17 months at it, and if that doesn't work, there's going to be a user fee in place. That would be my answer.
The only thing I'll say, and I'm off the line here, is they feel they can't deal with this operating budgets of the arenas and the deficits because they do not know or have any idea exactly what those amounts are. And for their budgeting, they feel very difficult about that. And I mean, money's an issue with everybody. I understand that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Strobridge.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. Just, I guess, more of a comment than a question. We passed this. I believe what Councillor Norton has said and the deputy. Give it a week. Maybe the outlying areas don't think we're actually going to pass this. I will vote for user fees. I don't want to vote for them tonight. I want them to know that we're deadly serious, and I believe the rest of this council is going to vote yes for it, whether I lose the vote, but I still like to have a little bit more information, and maybe the only ones who are going to suffer from this is our local citizens. It's not the outlying areas, folks. It's our local citizens that will hurt the most. It's the 50% that have only team left that have to pay the fiddle. And maybe minor hockey has to go back to the old system where you're playing one rink. That's just all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a comment. I mean, I haven't. I have a couple of comments I want to make. Just have to be careful. You know, this has been 17 months of work. There's been many, many committee meetings, a working group, and I just get the sense there's been a lot of conversations happening offline, and we're making comments like they're fact, and some of these are speculation. So just would urge us to be careful and deal with the information we have in front of us as we go through, please. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. I don't know how much is fact and how much is speculation. I'd like to know more. I agree with Councillor Norton that a lot of things are done at the 11th hour. And if this could be tabled, I'm not saying for months or weeks, but if it could be tabled for a week, and within that week, the parties don't get together and come to an agreement, then I too am willing to vote for the user fees. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of stuff that has not been considered, and I mentioned about the kids playing in different rinks are going to be paying fees here, fees there, and it's just going to be a real mess. But I say we take a week or so, give them one last chance, and then I'll come to a special meeting and do it if that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
This is the 11th hour.
2 months.
So, and it's not just the 11th hour for us. One of the things I heard pretty clearly at that meeting that I went to with all the users was registration's open. Registration for minor hockey, for St. John Youth anyway, they said at the meeting 3 weeks ago that their registration was open. So they've got fees to charge, they're taking registrations, and they don't know what they're going to be paying for ice because that's in 3 weeks. They don't know if they're going to have to be looking for these cards or not. Now is the 11th hour. Voting in favor of this now does not preclude all those conversations that need to keep happening. That second, St. John players, youth of the city of St. John, their teams may be smaller, they may be rearranged, they may look different, whether they're speed skating, figure skating, hockey, whatever the ice users are. There are many very successful small organizations running hockey in southern New Brunswick. I talked about going to Graham Manan. They have a team at each level. The Sussex regularly beat the snot out of my teams. You know, there are several very good small organizations. St. John Youth of St. John, are going to get ice. In fact, if for what some people have suggested that the 37% of non-resident users say, we're not going to go use ice in the city of St. John. Well, in the short term, while we're figuring out what to do with all that extra capacity, guess what? St. John residents are going to have a whole lot of ice to choose from if outside residents choose not to use ice in the city of St. John. There will actually be more ice available for St. John residents to use. At the end of the day, you know, and with all the hats we wear and all the empathy we have for folks in recreation and wanting to use facilities, I sometimes have to retreat to my role here at council, right? I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a parent of two hockey players. My oath at council is to the citizens of the city of St. John. So in my role sitting here, looking at what's best for the city of St. John with regards to our facilities, our usage, the amount of subsidy we're sending outside to outside residents from the taxpayers of the city of St. John, I really hope that we support staff's recommendations tonight and that those conversations, because it is the 11th hour, keep going.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Merrithew, wrap us up here.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan, because you're exactly right. This is the 11th hour, okay? A vote actually tonight might force the conversation along faster. You know, I don't think dithering will do that. It's been 17 months, okay? And lastly, if there are children that won't play from outside the region in St. John rinks, okay, because of this policy, you're lobbying the wrong people. Go lobby the other councils. That's who you should talk to. That's who don't want to come in and play fair with us. That's who don't want to share the cost properly, okay? That's them. That's not us. It's on them. Go see them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thanks. Let's wrap up. A couple of closing comments. A great discussion, debate, if you will. This is really a discussion for me, and it has to be considered in the broader discussion of our financial future. And as Councillor Sullivan said, that's the lens that I use: fairness to our taxpayers and a demonstrated fiscal responsibility. And we, you know, frankly, we need the money. We need the money for police, fire, economic development, arts, culture, and we're going to have many tough conversations coming up here over the next number of months. I think, you know, when I think about the amount of time we've invested in this conversation, 17 months, we have many other items we have to move on to within our work plan. And again, this recommendation today does keep the door wide open for an 11th hour volley. So I'm gonna call it here on the question. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, and contrary-minded? Okay, thank you, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor McKenzie, and the Deputy Mayor. Okay, the motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you for the work, everybody, and for the discussion. Whew, okay, Common Clerk, let me get you a mic. Yeah. Okay, sorry, sure. Those in the audience, you can stay for the other 2.5 hours, or we'll give you a minute if you're going to exit, just to do so. Thank you for coming.
Careful when I come up.
Bye.
No, don't you go anywhere, David.
Go to the back.
I'll make sure you drink it first.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, Common Clerk, next item.
Your Worship, next item on the agenda, disclosures of conflict of interest.
I have a conflict on hockey. I'm just kidding. That was a bad joke. Okay, thank you. Not seeing any lights. Thanks. Next item.
Next item, consent agenda.
I'll move 5.1 to 5.15 inclusive.
Okay, moved by the Deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. We have a few questions, perhaps. Councillor Sturbridge.
I'd like to pull 5.15. I need to ask some questions and discuss a little bit about that. And I also had a question about on 5.13 as well, please.
Okay, do you need it pulled, Councillor, or would you just like to ask your questions now, or would you like?
Well, sure. The Glen Falls flooding issue, I think, is probably going to be a little bit lengthy.
Okay.
But the one about the RFP for the City of St. John Benefit Administration.
Okay, so we'll deal with, so you'd like 515 pulled out, but we'll ask your questions on 513?
Yeah, because
Okay,
it's just a
thank you.
quick question, and perhaps I misread it or I overlooked it in the report, but it stated that there was an RFP process for that, and that the original provider was going to be kept on to continue providing. But I didn't see the results of the RFP as opposed to who the other providers may have bid. So I wanted to understand what the costs were of the other bidders versus who we're keeping.
Okay, Ms. Hossack's at the podium. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Can you repeat your question again? I don't think I fully got your question.
Sure. Am I on? Yep. The RFP for it in the report, and maybe I just overlooked it when I read it. I didn't see the costs from the other proponents who bid on it. I just saw that you were asking us to continue with the original provider, but there was no information on what the other bidders were offering.
Okay, sorry, I didn't bring all the details on the other providers. The cost savings is $24,000 a year from our current cost right now. So this was the best and final offer.
So this was so just to clarify, Ms. Hossack, or through the city manager, the recommendation, this was the lowest bidder. It's our current provider, and it represents $24,000 a year in savings over what we had been paying, and it was the best bid.
That's correct. Everything combined was the best offer for the city.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir, and thank you, Ms. Hossack, and Councillor Reardon.
I was
You had a
going to
question?
ask the same question. So the cost of that service went down by $24,000?
That's correct.
Why?
Well, people brought in some reduced rates.
Okay.
So it was to our benefit to go out to RFP. It had been 10 years since we had gone to RFP, so the bids came in, and we actually are seeing a cost reduction.
Oh, excellent. It's just so unusual.
I know, it's great.
Especially after 10 years. Okay, thank you. The other question I have, I will just say for the public that this consent agenda was 232 pages long. It's got all my favorite things in it. It's got grant agreements, and it's got bulk rental licenses in it, and governance policy, all the stuff you need a legal background to read. So the other two items that I think I'd like to pull would be 5.2 and 5.3, because I'd like to refer those to staff. So I don't know if I pull them or how I pull them. Okay, let's do that. Okay, thank you. That's the heritage issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're keeping track here, Common Clerk. Okay, thank you. Councillor Casey. Oh, hold on, please. Sorry, I got too many mics open. Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Really, I was going to talk about 515, the Glen Falls flooding, but it's just a receipt for information. I'm hoping that's going to get fixed.
That's $51 million. I think we've pulled it out, so we're going to have a
Okay.
discussion on it. Yeah.
All right, and I'd like to remove 5.1. If someone wants to, present in front of council, I'm not going to deny them, so I'd like to pull that. I know it's probably too late now, but
Well, I think the individual has left, and that's not in accordance with our procedure. So you can just remind us of our normal procedure. Certainly can do that, but it requires a 2/3 vote.
Well, it depends what the counselor was asking. If he was asking to remove the item to vote on whether or not to hear from the individual today, it would require a larger threshold to approve. But if it was to just hear from the individual at a later time, then it's a majority vote.
Okay, sorry, Councillor, can you just clarify what you're suggesting?
yeah, I'm assuming it was at a later date, is what I was assuming.
So we've dealt with city manager.
The staff recommendation was to deny the request to present because the vote of council this evening on the issue that he actually wishes to present on, which is non-resident user fees. And we've already heard from that association and all the other associations. So with the vote having occurred, that's why we are recommending that the presentation is not required.
Well, does Hockey New Brunswick agree with that?
Well, it's not up to Hockey New Brunswick. I guess it's up to us. So the recommendation is to deny it. You have a... yeah. So we can pull it out, okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just want to speak on the 5-6 about the asphalt resurfacing. This is a direct result of us, of the council, okaying the budget early, the engineering department getting all the contracts out early. We saved $1 million, and Michael Hugenholtz and all the team are going to be resurfacing $1 million more worth of roads in the city of St. John. So that's paid off handsomely, what this council has done in the engineering department. So thank you and keep it up.
Thank you, Councillor.
So can we have clarification of?
Yeah, Common Clerk, what were we polling here?
So, Your Worship, according to my notes, 5-1 is pulled, 5-2 is pulled, 5-3, and 5-15, and they would go as 14s.
Okay. Deputy, so you just move that again?
So I'll move 5.2
No,
to 5.
5.4.
I'm sorry, 5.4 to 5.14.
Correct, thank you. Okay, thank you. Move by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Motion carried. Next item.
Next item, Your Worship, members' comments.
I think we've used all of our comments up tonight. Sorry. Councillor Armstrong.
I haven't used mine up. No, don't forget about the fair taxation. It'll be coming to, the committee's going to meet this summer. Please be aware that you can present at this committee. And it affects every single taxpayer in this province about fair taxation. You can read it online at WW St. John. It's right there under the white paper. And also, don't forget, over in Dominion Park, all the beaches are going to be opening next week with lifeguards. A good summer, and what's the name of that place? The tree, what's it called?
Timber Top.
Tip Top. It's Timber Top, thank you. Which is Tip Top, and it's booming over there, so if you haven't visited, by all means, check it out. It's just an asset to the city of St. John and tourists, so thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just, I guess, I've been on, off, and on around council for a little over 10 years now. And one of the things I was reflecting on this week, just in casual conversations, typical stuff with staff, is what a change in the St. John staff culture in the last 10 years. Not to be a little critical, but way back in 2008, there seemed to be more of, well, we can't do that, councillor, because. We can't do that, councillor, because. We just had a presentation from Tim on the work that he did with a very, very challenging file around ICE. Some conversations I've been having lately with municipal operations just around little bits of pavement, little sidewalks here and there, and everything has gotten a response, even if it's not we can't do that now, it certainly will look at it. We've looked at it and here's our thoughts. Oh gosh, we missed that and we've patched it. So just really a grand catch-all thank you to the work that staff have been doing lately. I find it very positive and fun to work within. And the sunny weather today just screams, go hang out with Lexi the snow leopard. And the weather's beautiful, great time for walking around the Cherrybrook Zoo. Don't forget, camps will be starting soon, so if your kids have nothing to do this summer, get out, register them for a camp. And thank you for continuing to support your Cherrybrook Zoo.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple things. I'll do them on fast forward here. Over the weekend, we had the Port St. John Community Days. Prior to the weekend, we had the launch of Marigolds. Our Marigold project. I was joined the deputy mayor as well as Councillor McKenzie there on Main Street. 22 years, 80,000 people impacted, 4 million flowers, and I think they're up to about 68 sites in 70 different schools. Last thing, the Roots and Wings Garden launched on Prince Charles School over the weekend. Had the St. John Tool Library community build team there to repair the fence. I had a lot of planting going on. I just wanted to congratulate Michelle and Lisa in launching that project as both community members and parents of Prince Charles. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
That's it for me.
Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to recognize the residents of Crescent Valley, Anglin Drive area this past Friday, Saturday. They did cleanup over there. A great turnout of people that come in and cleaned up the community. And of course, the City of St. John helped out with the green machine. And I just love it when these communities get out in the springtime and decide to pick up some garbage and make the place look great. So thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Well, thank you, Worship. The St. John Horseshoe Club wants to get a little publicity, and they play at Shamrock Park in the North End on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. They have extra horseshoes, and they want anyone who wishes to come and try it. And they're having the St. John Championships here, or I should say the Canadian Horseshoe Championships here in July. So if you're interested into playing horseshoes, you can call 696-8769. The other two issues is that on coming up next 2 weeks is Canada Day, so I hope everybody goes out and attends all the events, and the parade is at 10:45. So for councillors and for the mayor and everyone, they're in the parade at 10:45. Lines up on King Square South. I should say King Square North. And this Friday is the most important one, I guess. It's a council barbecue at 5 o'clock at Loyalist Plaza, because it's the beginning of summer and the mayor will be ringing the bell to start the summer season. So 5 o'clock, city manager, you're invited. All the staff are invited. We'll have hot dogs, and our good people from Local 18 will be cooking the hot dogs, and they have all the equipment. So we'll be there to greet the public at 5 o'clock on Friday night. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to note that the Harbor Station Community Fair is still going on. I brought my daughter there on the weekend, as you could probably tell by my very red head. So I'm sure there's lots of sunny days to go enjoy the fair, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Worship. I didn't notice the thing.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Congrats to Seaside Park Elementary School and their entire school community on the opening of their new park. This past week, they had the ribbon cutting along with the park fundraisers, the school district, and all those folks. They got together. Most importantly, the kids. And I can tell you, it's being used from sunset to sundown. So it's a great park. And if you want to cross the bridge to West, and I don't see why you wouldn't, you want to check out that park. So if you have kids, come on over. Adults will like it too. Also, thanks to the Greater St. John YMCA for their Strong Kids campaign that they held. They raised some money, sent some kids to camp, and did a great job bringing the community together. By the busload, which means we've got to thank St. John Transit for providing transportation, free transportation, between the YMCA all the way out to the camp. So that was great. So lots of good community things happening, and as the weather heats up, so won't those events. So see you out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Common Clerk. Next item.
Your Worship, next item, we have a presentation from Paul Brown, and it's 8.1 on the agenda, locomotive horns at Douglas Avenue Crossing.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Brown, I love your T-shirt. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's a little shameless self-promotion. I make these myself.
Oh, I
Come see
know.
me
Well,
out
let us
here.
know where. I want one for sure. So, and you've been patient sitting here through. You're an expert on all things hockey. Now we're going to hear about train whistles. So thank you for
I
coming.
know more about arenas than I ever want to know about.
Yes.
So I want to thank the councilors and your worship for this opportunity to come forward with this issue. Going to give you a little background. I came to St. John by choice 2.5 years ago from out of province. Have no family connection here, had no job offer here, but I love this place. And I'd been through the area before, and that was a conscious decision. In fact, I even brought some other people from Ontario after the fact. So my economic development check, I'm just, when that comes, that's good.
Yeah.
But, there is a lot of great potential in this city, and I do love it. Certainly, I see the challenges that the city faces, and certainly you as elected representatives have to deal with. And I also see, unfortunately, maybe with some long-term or lifelong residents here, maybe a hint of cynicism, skepticism, you know, a little bit jaded that, you know, you'll never change things. That's the way it's always been. And, you know, well, if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? So I'm here to hopefully to present some ideas, you know, to work cooperatively and affect some positive change in our community. So one of the things is St. John transitions into a new economy is, you know, the industrial history, the past. Totally get it, and it's been a big economic driver here. But, you know, it also has an effect on quality of life issues, and certainly seen other issues going on in the community. And I would say that rail horns certainly do address or go to the heart of quality of life issues. It also hasn't been lost on me since coming here that there's a whole host of issues where there seems to be an 800-pound gorilla in the room. I'm not going to name that 800-pound gorilla because I think we all know what that is. But, you know, situation normal is not tenable in the long run, you know. Nothing's static. It's a dynamic community, and changes do have to be made from time to time. So no one wants to kill the goose that lays the golden egg either, but we have to find solutions to problems that have broad-based effects and affect a lot of people. So what I'm going to talk about is, you know, I'm talking about the Douglas Avenue level crossing in particular, but actually there are other ones in close proximity, Bentley Avenue, Sims Corners, and I would say that the same things apply to all of these. I also noticed after I finally figured out there are trains that run through St. John and blast horns, that in the east end of the city, the level crossing on Thorne Avenue on Rothsay, I noticed a sign, no train horns, and did a little background research, understood that in 2015, council passed a resolution, and as far as I know, there's been no major issues. I understand safety is a paramount issue when you're dealing with big, heavy equipment like a locomotive and rail cars. They just don't stop on a dime. Totally get that. But it seems that the solution in the East End has worked. So again, doing a little, you know, homework myself, I started looking at things like proximity of the rail crossings to residential areas. And when I look at the east side, Thorne Avenue, probably the closest residential unit's about 110 meters away. Rothsay, it's even a little further. It's about 125 yards. Where I live, I represent 55 residential units, owners and residents at 500 Douglas Avenue. We've got units as close as 18 meters from the rails. So it's more profound, I would say, in our end of town than it was previously in that end of town. And so what I want to do here is I want to play a little sound clip. This is a recording I made from my own residence back in December. Windows closed. This is not the loudest train horn you will hear in that area. It's not the lowest. It's kind of a good representation. I don't know how good your sound system is here. It'll give you an idea, but we would have to turn it up to 11 to get the full effect, and I don't think we can do that. But so I want you to take yourself there, put yourself around 2:30 in the morning. You're tucked in, you got your Sea Dogs jammies on, sound slumber, and then you get something like this. I'm assuming the sounds work. Yeah, so you really don't catch what it's like there, because when those train horns go off for 20, 30-second blasts, you feel it in the core of your stomach, you know. It doesn't just awaken you, it jolts you. And, you know, there's no rhyme or reason. It's not consistently very, very loud, but it's loud quite often. There seems to be different operators that like to use the air horn a little differently. It would be pure presumption that maybe the guys going through at 2 in the morning aren't wild about working a night shift and lay on the horn a little harder than normal, but there does seem to be a pattern that has evolved. And so my first inclination was not to come and waste your time, but you know, 2 years ago, when I'd first noticed this issue becoming kind of disturbing, I went out and met with one of the individuals at NBSR. We had a pretty good discussion, you know, and, you know, when you think about locomotive horns and the safety aspect, common sense has to prevail. And, you know, I picture Saskatchewan, flat prairie, level crossing, unmarked, locomotive coming along at 100 kilometers, going pretty good. A vehicle coming at a tangent to a level crossing, maybe traveling at 100 kilometers. You want a good long, loud blast so they don't happen to meet by accident. Totally get that. Most of these locomotives are not moving at high rates of speed. They're coming across the bridge or going up the hill. I would hesitate to guess if they're doing 30 kilometers an hour tops. But, you know, those long blasts are there. So anyways, I approached NBSR a couple years ago. I had a good kind of one-on-one casual talk with an individual there. I can't recall who it was. And the situation did improve. It seems like probably they had a little woodshed meeting with their operators and said, okay, you know, like, let's use some common sense. Let's use some discretion. And there are some operators that are amazing. They almost give like a little whoop on the horn. That's not an issue, but it's those long sustained blasts that are. But anyways, the situation did improve, but it deteriorated back to kind of the way it was within a few weeks. So after that, set up a meeting, met with Councillor McKenzie and Casey last year, kind of, you know, explained the issue, some of the concerns. They were quite accommodating. They listened to the concerns, and it's just an assumption, but I think something was said to the railroad, again, because the situation did improve. But again, slowly it went back. And so this is a good example. For those that think that regulations aren't necessary and corporations will self-regulate, it doesn't always work that way. So again, I talked about the proximity of our residential units to the rails, also up and down Douglas Avenue. On average, residences are maybe 70 meters. Train horn blasts at full can go in excess of 85 decibels, which is kind of a safety level. So there's a safety issue with sound too, and can travel about 200 or 300 meters at that 85 decibel level and cause damage. Whole host of factors would vary that, topography, what's going on, buildings and that, but you know, they can cause health issues and ear damage up to distances like that. I'll give you a little personal anecdote too. A friend of mine had her daughter and her granddaughter visit, and they were at the level crossing. There's no gates or barriers at Douglas Avenue, but there are bells and the flashing lights. So they were stopped there. There was a locomotive moving slowly across the bridge, and the toddler was about a year old. And no kidding, when the operator got right in front of them, laid on the horn in a way that, you know, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, but that was pretty much an assault on that little child. And that child, I know for a fact, is terrified of train horns to this day. So, you know, I don't know who the actor was, but it did almost seem malicious. You know, when I met with our two councilors, Mackenzie and Casey, last year. We had a robust discussion and talked about the similarities, why recreate the wheel. It's working well in the East End, putting up guard barriers, engaging lights, and trying the no horn route at that end of town. There was a question of, okay, well, who's going to pay for it? I personally, I don't think this should be a burden to the taxpayer. They're not making the revenue off the railroad. I would certainly think that the railroad has the financial assets to put in the proper safety devices. And I would also hope, as good corporate citizens, they would understand what an issue this is surrounding people's health and safety, quality of life, and work towards an amicable resolution. Barring that, there are other solutions too. This law about railroad blasts being set in stone across the country is it isn't written in stone. There is discretion that municipalities can be used, provided that safety is, tantamount. I was recently visiting a family in Brockville, Ontario, a couple weeks ago. They have a main CN line and a Ville line that runs through town, and you do hear the train blasts there, but not between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. There's a moratorium on it, and it seems to work there. So, again, I think there are solutions. I'm sure I know folks that would be willing to work with a working group, a working committee. So that's pretty much it. But again, you didn't hear anything close to what it's like. I've talked to people that are a couple of kilometers away hear that train horn. So imagine what if it's going right by your window. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Brown, for your presentation. We have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I've got a family connection. My dad was from Brockville as well, so I know the area very well.
I know someone that knows your
Mantel's
parents.
Fish and Chips or Don's Fish and Chips is my
Yeah,
question
Don's,
for you.
yeah, had it when I was there.
Yeah, perfect. Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your presentation. Did you say that there are gates at the Douglas Avenue crossing?
No.
And what about the crossing down, you're talking about both crossings?
I don't believe there's any
Gates,
physical guard barriers at Bentley Ave. I know there's not at Douglas and not at
So,
Sims Corners.
We would have to talk this over with Southern because they have certain regulations, probably referred to city manager, but there's something about the crossing, the gates that come down. If you have gates, it's easier to get the whistles off.
Oh,
because-
absolutely. That's exactly my
We'd
point.
have to talk to them about it, but I can certainly understand how it would be disruptive to your sleep and everybody else's.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
you probably have to leave it with us until we investigate it, because it took us quite some time to get the whistles off of the east side. It wasn't something we could do overnight. We had to work with Southern Railway for quite some time to get them to agree.
I fully appreciate that. Again, no point of reinventing the wheel. It's been done.
Yeah.
I would think it's maybe not exactly a cookie cutter, but I would hope that the process could be expedited a little in this situation.
Yes, because I don't know if they'll pay for the gates, so.
Pardon?
I don't know if they'll pay for those gates going down, but we'll have to look into that.
Well, the parent corporation, I once heard an individual say that they had money for an occasional hamburger, so I think they could probably afford a couple of gates.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Paul, for bringing this in. I know we met, about a year ago. And, I guess the criteria is, you have to have the bells, you have to have the gates, and you have to have the lights flashing. And, put those three together, it makes the job a whole lot easier to get the, but now I've learned over the last number of months since meeting with you, that we have trains coming up from the United States that have a different decibel level on their horns than Canadian-made trains or whatever. So sometimes if a train goes by and it sounds a lot louder, it is a lot louder because it's one of those trains, not one of our, I don't know if they're domestic or whatever. But the solution is, whether it's a loud one or not, at nighttime we shouldn't have them. I agree with you totally. It's
And
a
with
quality
all
of
due
life.
respect, The loudest ones are green and yellow, say New Brunswick Southern Railroad on them.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But I guess the bottom line is, you know, it's a quality of life issue, and I agree
Sure.
with the deputy mayor. I think that, you know, I would be certainly willing to have staff send a letter to Southern asking for, you know, some sort of a conversation about this, because it's not just you, it is residents down by Bentley and new residents in those new apartments, you know, and we are trying to grow the city, so we've got to try to be more collaborative with this type of thing. So
I
thanks
love
for
it
coming.
here. Don't make me go to Nova Scotia.
I don't want you going to Nova Scotia.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reardon, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Brown, did you look into the legislation that governs New Brunswick railroads and the horns, et cetera, that they have?
So my understanding is this is the preview of Transport Canada. I believe there are federal regulations. But again, as I said, they don't seem to be written in stone. There does seem to be some discretion that can be applied at the municipal level, provided, again, that safety is tantamount to those decisions.
So is there, or was there, or did you discover there was a range of decibels? I'm just curious. I mean, I have a car that could kill someone, but I'm sure my horn isn't 140 decibels. It's not
Okay,
necessary.
well, maybe if you had your ear right up to a vehicle horn, it may produce that. I've got a chart that's in the presentation that you all should have got. I don't want to waste time.
I guess I'm just curious if there is, or if you know, if there was a range, and I guess maybe we can look into that. If there's a range that's acceptable, you know, if their crossings aren't gated, and what the best practices would be, like across
So
the
85
country.
decibels is where the danger line is.
Right,
These locomotives where we are probably producing 105 to 110.
right,
About
yeah.
the same as a loud rock concert.
Right, so I guess the question is that necessary? You know, like I said, you know, when it was the Iron Horse that was running through the prairies with its big plume of smoke, it was, you know, something that I guess they wanted everyone to notice and blew at 140 decibels or whatever. We don't need that through the city. I mean, we can see it, it's big enough, you know, we can see it. And so if there is a range there, then maybe we can lobby for a lower decibel of acceptable range. I don't know anything about the train horns or
possibly the moratorium on certain hours.
whatever, exactly. But I do absolutely appreciate your dilemma, and I can see where it would be a health and safety issue to a certain extent for people because it disrupts your sleep. So, and when there's more and more facts coming out about sleep and how we
Not just
require
sleep,
it.
Actually, prolonged exposure to loud sounds
Mhm.
can have physiological
Right, for the ear.
health issues.
Exactly,
too.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, wrap us up, Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brown, for coming in. I live right across the water from you, right across the water. I know exactly what you're talking about. Zero common sense at 3 in the morning when that horn's just blaring. Zero common sense, because there's no traffic. Anyway, I hope the city might be able to write a letter, have a little influence, but it's a long process to get done. But anyway, it's sympathetic, because I live it too, but you're getting vibrated on from the horn.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. You had a
Refer to the city manager
for a letter.
for a report back at some time later.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on the referral, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed or contrary-minded? Sorry, not seeing any. Thank you. And a receive and file too, please. So moved by the Councillor Sullivan, second by the Deputy. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Let us know
Thanks.
where we can get those T-shirts. I want one of those. I mean, to buy it. I don't.
Where do we get your shirt?
Yeah, where do we get the shirts?
I'll send you an
Send an email. Okay, well, I'll share it.
We all want it.
Okay, next item, Com Clerk.
Your Worship, next item on the agenda is 10.1, and it's a consideration of a bylaw. It's Council's Code of Conduct bylaw. And just as a bit of background, I'll remind Council that this item was brought to Council in late 2018. It's a requirement under the Local Governance Act to have a Code of Conduct bylaw. We did provide a draft version of the bylaw back then. It was approved by Council and referred to the Solicitor's Office. And just really quickly, the highlights of the bylaw. As required in the Governance Act, it does touch on the following, which are requirements: values to which council members are expected to adhere, behavior of council members towards each other, staff, and citizens, the use of municipal property and resources, and the use of communication tools and social media. In addition, the bylaw has the following provisions: conflict of interest, respecting roles and responsibilities, gifts and benefits, conduct at meetings, handling of confidential information, and remedial action if contravention occurs. And tonight we'd be looking for first and second reading if council would like to move forward.
I'll move first reading.
Okay, moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. And deputy, you had a question?
Well, the question is, and you might not have an answer tonight, but who initiates it? If I was doing something that you personally didn't like, and could you report me, and then how does the rest of council have to agree, or can I report somebody else? I mean, how do you do
So
that?
it's a policing question. How does it policed? Is it?
Because if on Facebook, for instance, if I put something on Facebook, I'm not a big Facebook person, but if something is put on Facebook by a member of council, you know, we should have some idea of how we can determine, how we can accuse somebody else of what they're doing that is wrongdoing, because otherwise it could happen and somebody's going to accuse somebody something, and then we're not going to know how to handle it.
So that mechanism, Common Clerk?
Yeah, so I think, Your Worship, it will be a case-by-case basis. I would suggest whenever a council member has a question or concern, give the office of the clerk a call, give me a call, and we can at least discuss the situation. But sometimes it would be something that would be appropriate to bring to committee of the whole for council to have the discussion. Sometimes there are certain things that the mayor would have authority to do at a council meeting. So it's very situation specific. But it should be a conversation at the start with the clerk or city manager.
It should be something, though, that we all know what the consequences could be. I have no idea, but anything could happen. I mean, somebody might do something, not know they shouldn't be doing it, or they might do it deliberately, whatever. I just throw that out there because it is something that could come up sometime.
So Common Clerk, perhaps you could share, I know, so first of all, this is a requirement to have, is my understanding to have. We're now enhancing, we haven't had this level, we have some policy, but we're now putting a bylaw in place. And then other municipalities, like, for example, Moncton, I believe, are debating what are those mechanisms to get at some of the items, so we can learn from other municipalities as well.
Exactly, Your Worship. I know in Ontario, they have a commissioner that would oversee these things. In New Brunswick, we don't have that. Now, Moncton did look at hiring I think they called it an integrity commissioner, but I believe they didn't move forward with that recommendation. So New Brunswick, we are limited in terms of what sanctions can be applied or what consequences there would be for breach of this. But there certainly are some within legislation, and again, it's very context specific. So it depends on what the breach is in terms of how it could be handled. But it does, in the bylaw, it does touch on some of the consequences for breach of the bylaw.
Okay, that's fine, because I guess anybody can lay a complaint, any one of us, I mean.
Right, and then, and so the short answer is, for now, the mechanism would be a discussion at council. Yep. Okay, thank you, Deputy. Councillor Norton.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I don't have concerns with it. I think those are good policies to put in place. I think it keeps everybody above board, and at the end of the day, guess what? Keeps us classy. So I'm pleased with it. But the question regarding how that type of bylaw is administered, I think is an important one. So I think the deputy does bring up a valid point. In the absence of an integrity commissioner, not saying that that's the way we go. Who's gonna administer this type of bylaw in terms of how complaints or breaches of the policy are then handed out? Let's be honest, council. At the end of the day, what I don't want to see is I don't want to see a bylaw like this be used in either broad strokes or short strokes, used as a way to make the job more difficult than it already is. And what we can get into is council has most of the public knows is not a party system. As a result, there's a collection of individuals here, and sometimes, guess what? We're not all rowing in the same direction. So I don't want to see this used to weaponize arguments or disagreements that might already be undercurrents between individuals. Those are my concerns at a high level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. So we have first reading on the, yep, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Okay, anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any, thank you. The motion's carried.
So first reading, a bylaw respecting the code of conduct for elected members of the City of St. John.
Okay, thank you.
Move second reading?
Second.
Okay, moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. The mover and the seconder team. Thank you. Okay, great.
A bylaw respecting the code of conduct for elected members of the City of St. John.
Okay, great. Oh, sorry, you have a question?
No, I was going to move it.
Oh, it's already, I think
sorry.
we had on the floor. Sorry. On the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Okay, thank you. Motion is carried.
Oh, did I read that before
Oh,
you took the
yes,
vote?
I think so.
My
Actually, you got
apology.
me
I
all
have
up.
to read it again now.
I think it's so hot in here that my brain is not working. So
So a bylaw respecting the code of conduct for elected members of the City of St. John.
I wondered why you wrote that or read that. So thank you. Okay, thank you. Motion is carried. Next item.
Next item is 10.2 on the agenda. It's another consideration of a bylaw. It's for the municipal plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment with section 59 conditions at 40, 85 to 89, and 310 Retail Drive.
So
And- Yeah, this one is just, the next two are a little bit complicated. They require 5 motions.
Get a pen, someone, please.
So 10.2 requires the municipal plan be read in entirety and by title. And the second one is the section 59 condition, and then zoning first, or entirety and by title. So 5
first
motions.
is municipal
That's correct.
plan. Okay, Councillor Merrithew moved. Councillor Strobridge second. Thank you. Okay, on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Okay, thank you.
And if there's no opposition, I'm able to read this one in summary because it's quite lengthy. So.
Yes, please.
Okay. So this was advertised by the clerk's office. Public notice was given that the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 it would be amended as following. Adding regional commercial residential zone to section 2.2, adding regional commercial zone as section 11.12, adding 11.12 permitted uses, adding 11.12 2 conditional uses, adding 11.12.3 conditional uses, adding 11.12.4 zone standards, rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 3.99 hectares located at 310 Retail Drive, also identified as PID number 55230544, from regional commercial to a new zone that would permit residential land uses in addition to those uses currently permitted in the regional commercial zone, and rezoning a parcel of land having an area of 0.36 hectares located at 40 Retail Drive, also identified as PID number 55196166, from regional commercial to a new zone that would permit residential land uses in addition to those uses currently permitted in the regional commercial zone. Rezoning parcel land having an area of approximately 0.28 hectares located at 8589 Retail Drive, also identified as PID number 55122212, from mini home park residential to a new zone that would permit residential land uses in addition to the uses currently permitted in regional commercial zone, and amending section 11 by adding regional commercial residential zone to table 11.1.
That was the summary?
That was the summary, yeah. It was actually longer than that.
Okay, thank you. By entirety?
Municipal plan.
No.
By-
something-
by- By title.
By
Oh,
title.
by
Yeah.
title?
By
Excuse
title,
me.
we just
Yep.
did
I thought, okay, thank you. No, sorry, I just
I
want to be
moved.
clear. We
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 did the
voted once.
summary.
We did the municipal plan.
Right, the summary.
Okay.
And now we have to do it by title.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moved, seconded by Councillor Hickey. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Motion's carried.
And that's a law to amend the municipal plan bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, now we need section 59.
Move section 59.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Public
that's
Works?
correct.
Sorry. Okay. Moved by the deputy, seconded by somebody down the right side, Councillor Strobridge. Thank you. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any? No? Okay, thank you.
Move the zoning bylaw entirely.
Okay, moving the zoning. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Great. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any? Thank you. Motion is
And
carried.
I realize I read the zoning first, so I'll read the municipal now.
Please.
I just read it
Slowly,
out of
please,
order,
too.
very slowly and in French. Okay. The municipal plan of the City of St. John enacted on the 30th day of January 2012 is amended by A, amending subsection 2.3.2 of the municipal plan relating to employment areas within the city structure, B, amending policy LU 61, and adding new policy LU 61.1 with respect to residential and mixed-use development within regional retail centers. The proposed bylaw may be inspected in the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item.
Now,
Sorry.
third reading by title?
By title,
Oh,
yeah.
geez, Lord, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, next item.
Okay, and the next item is 10.3, and Commissioner Hamilton will give a brief explanation on this one. It's for 1007 to 1019 Millage Avenue.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, I just wanted to take a moment and advise council that you do have a supplemental report before you this evening related to this item. And it's specifically to reflect minor wording changes to the Section 59 condition. Subsequent to the public hearing held on June 3rd, the city solicitor recommended minor wording changes to improve the enforceability of the Section 59 condition 5B. And the revised wording is included, attached to the report, included in the report, and has been reviewed with the applicant who is in agreement. So in all other respects, the recommendations before you are the same.
I move the municipal plan amendment in entirety.
Okay, sorry, just for clarity, did we required a motion first to deal with this staffing?
The staff change, the recommendation in the report, yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yep. Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm completely lost here, sorry. So did you move it, Councillor McKenzie, first? Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie moved it. Councillor Merrithew seconded it, I believe. Thank you. Okay, on the question, all those in favor? Okay, anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you.
I'll move third reading of the municipal plan entirely.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Great. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you.
A law to amend the municipal plan bylaw being enacted by the City of St. John and Common Council convened as follows. The municipal plan bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 30th day of January 2012 is amended by 1, amending Schedule A city structure by redesignating a parcel of land with an area of approximately 7,242 square meters located at 1007 to 1019 Millage Avenue, also identified as PID numbers 000-48397 and 000-48389, from stable area and park and natural area to employment area classification, and 2, amending Schedule B future land use by redesignating the same parcel of land from stable residential and park and natural area to stable commercial classification.
Thank you.
Move third reading of title.
Thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Motion is carried. Thank you.
A law to amend the municipal plan bylaw.
Move 59,
Section 59, moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. Motion's carried.
move the zoning bylaw entirely.
Thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. On zoning, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Motion is carried. Thank you.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, be it enacted by the City of St. John and Common Council convened as follows. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by one, amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by redesignating a parcel land having an area of approximately 7,242 square meters located at 1007 to 1019 Milge Avenue, also identified as PID number 0004838 and 0004837 from 2-unit residential to corridor commercial pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act.
Thank you.
Move third reading of zoning by title.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Motion's carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Thank you. Next item.
And the last item under the bylaws is 10.4, and it's a zoning bylaw amendment with Section 59 conditions at 1003 Lattimore Lake Road.
Thank you.
Zoning
Fine.
bylaw
Fine.
amendment.
Is it entirety for, yeah?
Yeah,
entire-
that's
yep.
correct. Entirety, Section 59, then title.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, be it enacted by the City of St. John and Common Council convened as follows. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by one, amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by redesignating a parcel of land having an area of approximately 13 hectares located at 1003 Lattimore Lake Road, also identified as being portions of PID numbers 00033 124 and 00333-757 from rural to pits and quarry pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act.
Thank you.
Now we read it by title.
Section
59.
Section 59. Moved by the deputy and seconded by Councillor Sullivan.
And
Thank you.
title. Yeah, and title.
Okay, thank you. All on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Okay, thank you.
Now we need it by title.
That's correct.
Okay. We're gonna start shifting this up next meeting.
We'll move it.
By title, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you.
You can move it down there.
No problem. We'll take turns. We'll
The
keep.
zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
You two are just so fast. That's all it is. Okay. Wow, that was a mouthful. Next item.
On the agenda, 12.1, Your Worship, is the Continuous Improvement Initiatives Update.
Is this an update on fans and? Yeah. Good evening, Ms. Rackley Roach.
Good evening, Your Worship, and member of council. In a continuing effort to inform council and the public on our focus on growth and customer service improvement and sharing innovative service solutions, tonight staff are pleased to present 3 initiatives. Neil Jacobson, our Deputy City Manager, will provide an overview of an administrative directive to use city-owned sources for drinking water. Lisa Casey, Acting Communications Manager, will introduce a welcome event that will be coordinated with the city's successful Passport to Parks program. And our Commissioner of Community Growth and Community Development Services, Jacqueline Hamilton, will share her team's progress on customer service enhancements to the One Stop Development Shop. I'll turn it over to Neil.
Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The city has stopped the practice of using public funds to purchase bottled water, with only a few safety exceptions. We are also discouraging all employees from bringing to work non-reusable water bottles. In the interest of sustainability and as a demonstration of the city's commitment to continuous improvement, we are in the process of completing a transition to reliance on the city's own sources of drinking water and away from the purchase of bottled water for city staff. Accordingly, logistics are being put in place to ensure that the city's obligations under the New Brunswick Occupational Health and Safety Act are fully satisfied and to provide all of our employees, wherever they may work, with safe, high-quality drinking water. A process that began with testing water in all of our facilities is concluding with the installation of water bottle filling stations and with the provision of truck-mounted dispensers for our field crews. The end result will be a cost-effective, environmentally responsible, and sustainable solution that leverages the city's new safe, clean drinking water infrastructure, one that provides these benefits in cost reduction and environmental protection going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up. Good evening, Lisa Casey. Good evening.
Great. Hi, thank you. Nice to see you this evening. The St. John Passport to Parks program began in the summer of 2014 as a partnership between the city's communications and Parks and Recreation Services. It was established as an annual summer series designed to promote wellness, cross-community engagement, education, and cultural experiences with the incredible assets of our city parks taking the center stage. Since its inception, Passport to Parks has welcomed thousands of people to 14 city parks with support from a variety of sponsors, city service areas, community groups, local musicians, food service vendors, entertainers, and many other service providers. The Passport to Parks program is backed by popular demand this summer and will showcase 4 city parks: Rockwood Park, Station 1 Skate Park, Little River Reservoir, and Dominion Park from June 29th to July 20th. For the 4th and final 2019 Passport to Parks event, we'll be rolling out the welcome mat for a homecoming party like no other. Maybe second to Area 506. There's nothing like throwing on your flip-flops, grabbing a towel, and heading to the beach on a sunny day. You arrive to the smell of suntan lotion and hot dogs, the sound of music, and the feel of the hot sand on your toes. We're bringing back the beach day with a big St. John-style welcome, Passport to Parks, welcome and homecoming edition. We'll feature the best of St. John at one of the best parks in St. John, Dominion Park. We'll have local entertainment, local artists, local food vendors, free kayaking, swimming with lifeguard service, ground tours of the new Timbertop Adventures, prizes, games, and much more. The event will be held again, like I said, Dominion Park, which is on the west side of the city, on Saturday, July 20th, with a rain date of the 21st from 1 to 3 p.m. We're saying welcome to families who make Dominion Park a regular summer destination. Welcome home to folks from away who are visiting family and friends. Welcome back to longtime residents who haven't been to Dominion Park in years. Welcome to newcomers who have yet to experience a fun-filled day on the St. John River. Grab your lawn chair, towel, and sunscreen. Our St. John Welcome Team is looking forward to seeing you. The event this year is proudly organized and supported by the city's Parks and Recreation, Population Growth, and Communications Services. Monday to Saturday summer bus service is available, so that Saturday it will be available at regular bus fare. It's the Milford number 13. And we ask you to help spread the word and encourage people to come out, have fun, enjoy the company of others, and experience the natural assets of our city parks.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ms. Hamilton.
On the theme of continuous improvement, I'm pleased to share the significant progress over the last 90 days to action the customer service enhancement plan for the one-stop development shop. This project, being led by Growth and Community Development Services in partnership with Develop SJ, is aimed at elevating the customer service experience at the one-stop shop from good to great. Over the last 90 days, we have hosted robust engagement with our clients and with our staff, including 3 sessions with our managers to define our vision and priorities for customer service improvement, 2 engagement sessions with 22 of our clients, including developers and their consultants, to understand their pain points and what they value from our service. 1 all-staff training session to build buy-in and strengthen the capacity to deliver excellent customer service. 6 project-specific workshops to pilot high-impact customer service improvements, and updates to key stakeholders, including the city's senior team, the Develop SJ board, tonight council, and in July, the Growth Committee. This engagement has yielded significant positive outcomes, including a major deliverable team building with this between the city's Growth Department and Develop SJ, really clarifying our respective roles and how we can work together as one team to deliver value-added services to our clients. The client engagement has produced a more in-depth understanding of the needs and values of our clients and has helped us prioritize improvements which add the most value. Connected to this feedback, we've launched 2 rapid lab improvement customer service projects, including a solutions-oriented customer service initiative aimed at piloting solutions-oriented based culture with a small staff team focused on active development projects, and an infrastructure improvement project aimed at ensuring a seamless engineering approvals as part of the process. While building a customer-first culture certainly takes time, we've made significant progress in a short period of time to enhance the client-focused lens that was first introduced with the one-stop development shop. We look forward to your continued support over the coming weeks as we pilot these customer service improvements, and this project certainly also contributes important learnings and lessons for the city as we move forward to embrace a customer-centric culture across the organization.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hamilton. Question, Deputy, did you have a question or?
Well, I had a question on the first one on water. They were all good. They're all good presentations. But on the water, do we have a water vehicle that will go out to community events and give out water?
City manager?
Water here.
Oh, Brent? I saw Brent driving around giving out water one day. Okay, 1 second here. Let me get a microphone. Mr. McGovern.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. No, we don't have a water vehicle. We have, in our facilities, public fountains and those sorts of things that we make use of, but there's no vehicle that goes around to.
Okay, I thought you said, or you didn't, but I thought they said they had a water tank, and I thought that would be geared up to be able to go to certain places. To
Yeah, so I
give the
think
public an opportunity to drink the water if they're not drinking it now.
I think maybe what was referred to was the containers that can be attached to the back of a truck, so that crews that are working out in the site have access to safe, clean drinking water throughout the day.
But we don't do that for the public.
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deputy. You, Councillor Merrithew.
Yeah, very quickly. First of all, thank you to everyone. Great presentations. On the passport of parks, do we have dates on these passport, on all of them though, the res and?
Yes.
All right, why don't we spit them out just for people listening, please?
Sure. So the first one in Rockwood Park is Saturday, June 29th. And again, the rain date is June 30th. It's from 1 to 3 p.m. The Station 1 Skate Park is on July 1st, which is Canada Day, from 10 to 1. The Little River Reservoir is July 13th from 1 to 3 p.m. and Saturday, July 20th is Dominion Park Beach. The information's all on our homepage of our website as well.
Thank you, Lisa. And from Mrs. Hamilton, I've heard feedback from contractors already, and it's been very, very positive. We've taken what was a very good service even better, and I thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question on the water as well. I'm 100% supportive of that. I think it sends the wrong message when you're buying water and you have a $250 million water system. But not only that, it's drinking your water out of plastic. I'm 100% against plastic and drinking out of it. So what my question is with the new fit-up of the new council spaces, or city hall space, will there be, which you don't see that often anymore, will there be, like, I guess, water fountains or some access for water, for people to fill their water bottles or whatever they want to bring? Filling them out of the bathroom is kind of sketchy. Okay. So I don't know. I don't see any water fountains on this floor. Maybe they are here. I just haven't noticed them. But I'm just curious if that's going to be, if that's being considered.
With the declared policy of no longer providing bottled water at public expense, short answer is yes. We've already done some design changes here to ensure that people could have access to water to satisfy our health and safety requirements, and the new City Hall will also have those requirements satisfied. It won't be a water fountain every 100 feet, but people will have access to the proper facilities to fill water bottles or to consume.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a quick comment. First of all, thank you, City Manager. I think you brought these regular updates to the council agenda. I think it's really great for the public to hear about the number of initiatives that we're tackling. And I think it really speaks to the leadership that we have in this organization at all levels, that on top of delivering the services in a $250 million organization with $2.7 billion in assets and a few challenges that we've talked about over the last few years, we're also driving the organization forward with new initiatives, with innovation, testing new processes, looking to improve already great service and make it better, implementing a $200 million water project and on and on. So I hope it speaks very well to those in the audience here and those at home that we have to our chief of fire, chief of police, to the whole organization is filled with incredibly dedicated, incredibly talented people that are working day in and out to deliver better service to citizens in a pretty complex world. So I just really thank you for highlighting with these presentations. Okay, receive and file, I guess, on all of those. Yep. Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Hickey. Down that way, thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? And contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Okay, Common Clerk, next item.
Next item, Your Worship, 12.2 on your agenda. It's for the demolition of vacant, dilapidated, and dangerous building at 22 McLaughlin Road.
Okay, Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, this evening we have another dangerous buildings file for council's consideration. This program continues to receive positive momentum and results. Year to date, our team has closed 32 cases, making significant progress on our year-end target of 80. The file before you this evening is for a property at 22 McLaughlin Road and the city's east side, and I'd like to now turn it over to Ms. Catherine Lowe, our technical services engineer, who will provide a brief overview of the file.
Good evening.
Good evening, councillors and your worship. Tonight I will be presenting to you the staff recommendation to demolish the building at 22 McLaughlin Road. So there is just the one building on the property, a single-story, single-family house. The property suffered a major fire on May 4th of 2019. The current owner has resided at this property since 2002, but indicated in April 2019 when I spoke with them that they were forced to vacate the property, likely due to bankruptcy, and that they would not have the funds to repair or do the demolition themselves. So the following photographs will show you the condition. And now if there's any questions.
Okay, I don't see any questions. I have a statement to read just before we get into the recommendation that the information which has been provided in the council kit includes the report of the building inspector stating that the building located at 22 McLaughlin Road, PID 333930, is a hazard to the safety of the public by virtue of its being, amongst other things, dilapidated or structurally unsound. Is there present an owner, including anyone holding any encumbrance upon this property, who wishes to present evidence to the contrary, i.e. that the building is structurally sound and not dilapidated? Okay, not seeing anyone. Somebody would like to move the recommendation? Okay, Councillor Hickey and seconded by Councillor Reardon. Thank you. See no microphones on the question. All those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lowe, again.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick comments, and I apologize, one in the consent agenda, but I think it just speaks like almost every council meeting we're here dealing with one of these properties over and over again. 80 cases cleaned up a year for the last 3 years. It just speaks to the larger need for reform that we have in the city of St. John. How many properties have we seen where people have walked away from couches and furniture and just walked away from the homes, and it just, again, every time I see one of these properties, it hits me. And then the one in the consent agenda that I forgot to mention, because I've received probably about 30 emails on it, so I thank you to our staff, is 665 Loch Lomond Road and 669 Loch Lomond Road, where we did demolition with an F-150 and a Tonka truck trying to rip buildings down. And once again, I mean, we're going to deal with it, we're going to clean it up, and we're going to get our money back through this mechanism with the province after hundreds of hours likely of staff time. And it just is so irritating to me that that it's irritating to me around responsibility, that people just walk away from these properties, that they leave them in that state. And you know, I could name 3 on Rossi Avenue that are growing with dilapidated cars, and on and on and on. So I guess my message is, one, of gratitude and thanks to staff for continuing to focus on cleaning up our community. And second, for those property owners, you actually have responsibility. Do what's right. And stop just leaving it to our staff, which costs taxpayers money. And then lastly, in my rant, I apologize, is just it just speaks to the greater need that we have for reforms that we've been talking about now for years and years and years to you know, hopefully the 80 a year go to 60, and then 50, and then 40, and then 30, and we're not having to chase people around to do what's right. So thank you very much. Next item, Common Clerk.
12.3 on your agenda, Central Peninsula Plan and associated capital projects update.
Okay, Ms. Hamilton, likely? Yep, Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council. Tonight marks an important milestone in the Central Peninsula neighborhood planning process, which is a key growth priority for council. Over the first half of 2019, there's been a significant effort on the part of staff and council's neighborhood action team to update the neighborhood plan documents to reflect feedback from the public last year. The Central Peninsula neighborhood plan package includes a new secondary plan, an action strategy, as well as related amendments to the Heritage Bylaw, Zoning Bylaw, and Plan SJ that will bring this plan to life. This evening, we'll be sharing an updated schedule for the plan's adoption, which is expected to occur by the end of 2019. And to capitalize on the positive momentum building on the plan, staff are bringing forward, on behalf of the Neighborhood Action Team, recommended capital priorities for the Neighborhood Capital Fund that was approved by Council in 2018. I'd like to now introduce our project lead, Ms. Jennifer Brown, who will provide an overview of the report and recommendations before Council.
Oh, just let me get you a microphone, Ms. Brown. Sorry. Podium. There you go.
Thank you. I'll keep it light and fast. So, the Central Peninsula Plan has undergone a refresh and is being prepared for council adoption. Since you last saw the preliminary draft, staff wrapped up a substantial engagement phase aimed at testing the draft plan to remove, testing the draft plan to ensure it was compatible with the community's vision, while also being operational. We've spent the last months responding to feedback generated during that phase of engagement. What's resulted is a clearer, more focused plan that's positioned to unlock substantial growth in the city's core while improving the quality of life for residents of St. John. This will be accomplished through an increased focus on the Central Peninsula's neighborhoods, the Uptown, the South End, Waterloo Village, and key transportation corridors that move people into the area. The plan and associated amendments to Plan SJ, Zone SJ, and the Heritage Conservation Bylaw will remove barriers for infill development and provide guidelines for the public realm. The community action strategy will focus on tangible actions facilitated through partnerships with community groups and residents, and also city-led initiatives. The upcoming plan is expected to be a toolbox for council, residents, businesses, developers, and staff to achieve a balanced approach to community and economic development and guide the Central Peninsula to success over the next 30 years. Staff are planning to be back in front of council in September to initiate the adoption process, with final approval occurring by the end of this year. The adoption process provides several opportunities for council and public input. In addition to the legislative engagement, staff will be re-engaging with the community and stakeholders over the summer months to ensure the final documents are in keeping with the community's vision and priorities for the Central Peninsula, and also further preparing for implementation. Council allocated $500,000 in their 2018 capital budget to fund high-impact projects associated with the neighborhood plan. Working with the Neighborhood Action Team, the city's finance team, and city departments, a list of prioritized capital expenditures was created. Each project was considered under specific criteria, including alignment with the Central Peninsula Plan's vision and guiding principles, corporate and operational priorities, the ability to implement, including the potential to leverage an existing project, and the potential to positively contribute to the quality of life for residents and spur growth. Consensus was formed around the preference to invest the funds in multiple impactful projects rather than just a singular focus. This supports council's original intention of directing expenditure towards impactful projects while also respecting what was heard from the community throughout the planning process. Staff, with the support of the Neighborhood Action Team, is recommending the capital funds be allocated to the following projects. Rainbow Park improvements. So this would include investments in lighting, planting, and improved fencing in line with the Rainbow Parks master plan. Community beautification, and these are smaller scale improvements brought to light through the community engagement phase, which would include things like more garbage cans, which we've heard endless amounts about, more garbage cans in the area, greening and planting, public realm improvements like tree grates and planters. And we're looking at these as impactful and visible improvements that'll be dispersed throughout the Central Peninsula. City market upgrades and improvements. So the planned strategic growth concepts call for South Market Street to be transitioned to a permanent public space through conversion to a pedestrian street. Updates to the public realm, atrium furniture, and improved lighting are needed to facilitate a new and unique public space. This would also include investments needed to support the night market, which is acting as a pilot project for a new community space, and quite successfully, I must add. Fundy Key seawall design work would be the last of these buckets. So again, we have strategic growth concepts that point towards Fundy Key as being a site for catalytic development. These funds would enable Develop SJ to advance strategic preparation for work related to the recent seawall funding announcement. So I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the continued work of the Neighborhood Action Team, the Citizen Committee made up of residents, business owners, the Executive Director of Uptown St. John, Councillor Reardon, our most recent addition, Councillor Hickey. They've been the conduit to the community and have worked very hard as ambassadors of the neighborhood, the plan, and the city. Their continued commitment is exceptional. I really mean that. They're a very exceptional group, and it should be commended. Confidence is building in the Central Peninsula, and the Central Peninsula Plan will continue to support and build upon the vibrancy and momentum generated by the community. It is with great excitement that the staff will bring the plan documents forward for adoption in the coming months, signifying an exciting next chapter for the heart of the city. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Councillor Reardon, move, and second by Councillor Hickey. I think they were, the recommendation is together, Councillor, so moved by Councillor Reardon, seconded by Councillor Hickey. Thank you. Questions, Councillor Strobridge?
I heard her say, excuse me, about adding more garbage cans down to what, the south end, uptown areas? So is there gonna be manpower to empty them? Because that's usually the biggest problem, is the ones that we have now are overflowing and the garbage is going up and down the sidewalk and nobody's there to empty them. Maybe they're too small. I don't know. Great, more garbage cans, but if no one's coming, if there's no one there to empty them, they're useless.
Commissioner, hold on, I need to clear a mic. Commissioner Hugenholtz.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, our team has worked quite closely with Uptown St. John and the growth team on this plan. So we have committed the resources needed to empty them. I would add as well that these are kind of solar compacting garbage receptacles, so it should help alleviate as well some of the issues about them filling up quite as fast. We can even set up, even set up alerts to notify our staff when they reach a certain level of fullness, so we can send our staff to empty those.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Reardon, you had a comment, question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I also want to say thank you to the team. Staff's been fantastic on this project. We started off with Jeff Sear, who was our lead, but then he got seconded over to Develop St. John, and then we ended up with Jody Clifford, and Jeff was fantastic, and then we had Jody Clifford, and Jody was great, and he went with Civilized, and now we have Jennifer, and Jennifer's fantastic as well,
Jennifer.
and you're not going anywhere, Jennifer.
What are you trying to say? You're running staff out of town? Is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but anyways,
some self-reflection, perhaps. Counselor,
Jennifer's going to bring this to the close with us, and staff has been supportive, and like we've had those little bumps of trying to get reorganized as we've gone along, but staff's been really great with this, so it's been wonderful to work with everybody. It's been a great experience, and so and it's great to see it come to fruition. So I want to thank council, because council had the unanimous support for us to go forward with a neighborhood plan, and so thanks to council for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey.
Not much to add beyond Councillor Reardon, but I came in at a perfect time. I showed up at the first neighborhood action
It was all done.
committee meeting and got handed the report, so it was great. But the hard work that the team put in and the members of the committee is really, really evident on this. And I just want to again commend council and commend the team for the job well done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Well, excellent presentation. I'll call on the question then. All those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you, Ms. Brown, and to the entire team. Okay, Common Clerk, Mike. Next item.
Next item, Your Worship, 12.4 on your agenda. It's City of St. John Climate Change Adaptation Plan presentation.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Fudge, Commissioner Fudge, I believe you're going to hit your button for me. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, through your worship. Pleased tonight to introduce the very patient executive director of ACAP, as well as our asset manager, Samir Yamin, who is going to give an update to council on the City of St. John Climate Change Adaptation Plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Just, let me get you. There we go, Mr. Yamin. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, Council. I'm very happy here to have Mr. Graham Stewart Robertson, Executive Director of Atlantic Coastal Action Program, ACAP, to provide the Council an update on the City of St. John Climate Change Adaptation Plan. It's important for the Council to understand the plan here before we submit it finally in 2020 for approval. Before I hand it over to Mr. Robertson, I just want to give you a quick background on the plan here. The plan is part of our Climate Change Action Plan, which was approved by Council in May 6, 2019 here. The plan was requested by the province of New Brunswick to be completed in order for us to continue receive our infrastructure fund here. We have received the plan is fully funded by the Environmental Trust Fund here. And since then, the City of St. John, with many staff from the transportation, planning, finance, and other departments, St. John Water, have been working closely with ACAP here to develop such plan here, the Climate Change Adaptation Plan. Basically, before I gonna hand it over, I just want to give you a couple of summary of this plan here. It consists of four parts here. Part one, which identifies what are the climate hazard in St. John here and their impact. The second part here is we want to conduct a vulnerability assessment to identify area vulnerable to climate change, such as flooding, seawater rising, ice storm, and so on. The third part here is we need to develop an action and strategy. How can we be a community resilient to such hazard? And the last one, which is very important here, is how can we implement this plan here and how can we adopt the strategy? And I can assure you some of this strategy will be embedded into our plan SJ, to our zone SJ, into any new development we do here as part of our asset management plan also, as well as part of our any bylaw, whether it's stormwater bylaw or something else. So the plan is definitely in line with our neighborhood plan, our plan SJ, climate change action plan, and our asset management. And we hope to have the plan completed by 2020 and to present it in council in March 2020 also. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to have Mr. Robertson here to present us.
Thank you, Samir, Your Worship and Council. Happy to be here this evening at Council After Dark, basically, which is very exciting, to introduce an update to Adapt SJ, or a climate change adaptation plan for the City of St. John. Just a bit of background for those not familiar with ACAP St. John. Since our founding in 1992 by Environment Canada, we've been working to really facilitate a better environment here in St. John, starting first with our harbor and its waters, but moving on since then to encompass the land and the air and the people and the habitats contained within the city as well. And we've seen phenomenal change in those 27 years. By really focusing on these strategies as an organization which feed into Adapt SJ as well. And that's by engaging and educating the public through everything from plantings and cleanups through to in-class and in summer camp soon education programs, to working to actively regenerate and restore ecosystems and landscapes and human ecosystems as well. And finally, to find a better balance between our urban model of sustainability and restorative development and our natural systems, so that we as a city will better exist in the future as a more resilient community, as one which benefits our economy, our society, and our natural systems equally, to provide a thriving energy within our municipality. And finally, we work as an incubator to really facilitate bringing the best of global science and global thinking here to St. John. And that brings us to ADAPT SJ. ADAPT SJ is ACAP St. John's work towards developing essentially two different plans. Just like Plan SJ and the neighborhood plans coexist and are very much complementary, we have spent the last 18 months or so working on neighborhood plans for climate change adaptation. And then, as Samir introduced, we are midway, roughly, through a process of developing a citywide adaptation plan for climate change, which will meet the province's requirements for a municipal adaptation plan, but also go above and beyond when it comes to looking for new solutions for resiliency within our communities, to realizing that the impacts of climate change are not far off in St. John. They are things that we are feeling today, and to find opportunities within existing frameworks such as Plan SJ, through existing projects such as even the port's modernization activities on the west side, to build that resiliency starting today and not waiting until the future. So that first neighborhood piece was called An Urban Blueprint for Water, and it's in draft, and some of those drafts are available if you'd like to see them. We can certainly make that possible. And those are to set a more granular level focus, just as the neighborhood plan does, on what actions can be taken in the South Central Peninsula, the Old North End, and the Lower West Side, on focusing as a landowner, as simply a tenant, as someone who just works perhaps in a community, on what you can bring in terms of climate change adaptation as an actor, as a stakeholder or a rights holder here in the community to play. And that really let us propose some changes, some adaptations which have already begun to feed into things such as St. John Energy's recent application to move a substation, towards some future work with perhaps the seawall at Fundy Quay, and a number of other initiatives that are focused on everything from placemaking in those neighborhoods, as we just heard discussed here this evening, but also to look at new opportunities, to find opportunities that groups like ACAP St. John with additional funds can bring those into our community as well. But more importantly, we're working on climate change adaptation plans for the entire municipal boundary. And that's the piece that our update is most important on focusing here tonight on. And that's on, as Samir mentioned, focusing on identifying vulnerabilities, looking for opportunities for resiliency and implementation within our existing asset management work, and a number of other fantastic initiatives in the Climate Action Plan approved by Council in May. But also looking for best management practices, ways to educate and engage the community on this, so that we're not coming at it from this lofty global perspective of we hear the fear and the challenges associated with climate change on a scale that seems beyond us. We're about bringing a plan that's meaningful not just for council, but for people who live, work, and play and settle here in the city, so that they have actions to take part within, that they have a role to play, that it doesn't feel overwhelming, and they understand the impacts not on a global scale, not hearing 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, this amount of sea level, but understanding how many heat days does that mean for St. John in the future? How does that impact my home on South Bay? To understand the minutia of climate change as it applies here in the city. So as Samir mentioned, we have a steering committee which by chance or by fortune is actually meeting tomorrow afternoon as well, and involves a number of these participating city departments, as well as some key external stakeholders such as St. John Energy, the Port of St. John, Quest and RV Anderson Associates, who are working on some other initiatives with Samir and throughout the city as well. And it's really key for us to bring everyone from EMO to St. John Water all within the same steering committee, because again, climate change impacts all facets of our community. And by bringing these people together, we can really start to tease out those vulnerabilities and those opportunities inherent in this adaptation action. So as of now, we've completed our background and gap analysis for adaptation here in the city, and that involves analyzing some of the things you see itemized on the slide, including Plan SJ and Move SJ, to look at opportunities and risks even within those policies as we move forward. Where are there challenges with respect to how we move as a transportation network? Where are there challenges in delivering water when we look at the changes in precipitation pattern being more focused on early peaks and perhaps very little or none later in the year? One of the things that we also completed thus far is inland flooding assessments, which have, you can see in the background of the slide, really narrowed down our focus on where the vulnerabilities are within our city. This is one particular part of the east side in the Marsh Creek floodplain. But we've done this throughout the city, doing different scenarios, using the most recent LiDAR data for elevation mapping, and going through and mapping the culverts and the bridges and the stormwater network, and being able to look at different scenarios, such as if we have ice jams like we saw this January that cause our storm sewers not to drain properly, where is the water going to pool in that scenario versus a summer storm where perhaps everything's flowing as it should, but we are seeing water pool in wetlands or areas which had been developed with permeable surfaces instead of impermeable. So again, we've developed that. We can even see where water might make a 2-meter wide puddle now, and to better understand where those risks might be and where, again, opportunities to adapt our community fit within that. And we've also checked these versus demographics in all these neighborhoods, so we understand not just the assessment value you see there that shows the number of properties and the nigh on $300 million of just private, not public property within those flood areas, but to understand the demographics of those people and to know that those who are going to be most impacted by climate change are those with the least capacity to adapt to it. And again, same with sea level rise. We've done scenarios based on the province's projections, so to meet their requirements, and looking out to 2100 and what a 100-year storm would look like at that time, and identifying the nearly $1.1 billion of private property at risk moving forward based on 2018 assessments. And again, this is about identifying risks where emergency evacuation routes may be underwater during a storm surge event, all kinds of challenges which we can then unwrap and develop reactions to. We've also developed our own data sets for some of this work, some of which includes an urban forest inventory in 2 of our neighborhoods. We'll be doing the north end this summer as well, and identifying the ecosystem services benefit of each tree within the South Central Peninsula thus far and the Lower West Side towards storm water, CO2 emission reduction, and so we can actually calculate over the lifespan of a planting which may take place as a result of the neighborhood plan, how much in ecosystem services value we can save during the lifetime of a particular tree based on its species and a number of other things. So again, working with St. John Energy to identify line vulnerabilities at the same time really allows a steering committee and a plan that is holistic in its view to bring in the best available knowledge from all available bodies. And finally, looking at social measures is critical for us as well. We know how much phenomenal work is being done on poverty initiatives in our city, as well as improving accessibility for a number of different city services, including recreation and emergency services. But to itemize that, look at those vulnerabilities I just mapped out and look at where the demographics lie. And we can see significant statistics like 32% of St. John's population being affected directly by sea level rise in the coming decades. So there are significant challenges moving forward with an aging population as well, but not ones that we cannot handle by working together and establishing excellent planning and by building capacity and understanding within our community so that people know what those risks are and how they can adapt to them. And so we'll be moving forward over the coming months to educate with our communities at all age groups and all demographics with the data we have thus far about global climate change, about local climate change, and just what can be done about it and what the opportunities inherent in it might be. And we're doing that by going to schools, by working with partnerships with things like the YMCA day camps, which every attendee of the thousands they'll have this summer will learn about climate change in St. John in particular. And we've been working with local landowners, things like the St. John Fieldhouse project as an example, to build in stormwater wetlands, green infrastructure, which exceed current requirements because we're being forward-thinking, looking beyond. And we'll be doing this engagement at a lot of public events coming forward. We were at Port Days to a certain extent in recent weekend, but we'll be at Third Shift and Area 506, a lot of public events, working with trade groups, the Real Estate Association, having a storefront activities as well in various places throughout, likely the Central Peninsula, and working on avenues that people can engage and learn firsthand. They can see how they have a role to play. We hear a lot about mitigation and the great actions we can all take part in to reduce our emissions and to reduce our. There's a lot of talk about single-use plastics lately and all the like, but to find adaptation actions people can take as well. And I'm particularly excited to bring that to our community. And again, to react to that, we'll be having participatory mapping exercises throughout the summer. We'll be going to places to do this at all the festivals and events I listed before and many more. But you can also go online to our website as of May 27th. Click through links or go to acapsd.org/climate survey, and you can map out key assets, areas at risk, areas you've seen flooding, areas you've seen urban forest risks, any number of different parameters, and you can map them out. It's just like Google Maps. You just put a point, you can draw a polygon or a square or any shape you would like, and it'll all be mapped into heat maps for us, and we can layer that in with all of the great data we have about our community. So we're really excited to bring that on board using expertise from St. Mary's University, the University of New Brunswick, the University of Waterloo, and the Intact Climate Change Center, and a lot of great partners across the country. So this is our timeline for the future, just to end up. We're going to be doing feedback and review of our action register in the coming months, completing our vulnerability assessments in, again, early fall, late summer, and we'll be doing our draft and final reviews with staff, with our steering committee, towards the end of the calendar year, and hopefully, barring any unforeseen challenges, be coming back to council for a submission of our final plan in the new year, which will be extremely comprehensive in its purview. And I have no shame in saying it will be the best and most comprehensive adaptation plan in Eastern Canada, because we've seen a lot of the others. I know the writing of others. We will perhaps be writing the same one for another municipality in New Brunswick. So I can say without a doubt it will be amongst, if not the best. And it's about building local action towards resilience, and finding opportunities that St. John can lead and find not only opportunities for resiliency and cost savings, but opportunities for unlocking new funding opportunities through not just mitigation, but through adaptation from the federal government in particular. And we're starting to see that play out even as we speak. And I did want to touch on that all of this is being done with phenomenal staff support from the City of St. John, but we have brought nearly to date $300,000 of external funding from other levels of government, from private foundations, from FCM, and from the province of New Brunswick to work on this plan, to work on its outreach, to work on its implementation. So this is by no means something that is already costing money. This is already a phenomenal value add to the City of St. John, and I'm very proud to point that out. So I want to encourage people to get engaged who might be watching council this evening or here in the room, but I'm happy to take questions on this update because it is quite a monumental piece. If anyone wants to see the background, there's nearly 300 or 400 pages of background research that's gone into this, and that is just the beginning.
Excellent.
So thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Deputy Mayor.
Well, Graham, I don't have a question, but I wanted to say thank you because I think since 1992, you've been really active in, not you yourself all those years, but ACAP has been very active in the city of St. John, whether it started with the harbor and the air conditions and all that. And you've done so much with trees and every other aspect of this community. So really your agency has been a consistent in this city and trying to make it a better place to live. So we really appreciate the work of yourself and all the others that you're at ACAP. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy.
Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Certainly echo the Deputy Mayor, and just wanted to thank you, Graham. It was fantastic that you guys are leading the charge on this, and it's exactly what we need in this city. Climate change has to be our number one priority, and it has to be a consistent lens that we use as councillors to make decisions in the city. so important. I love the quote you had. The people most impacted by climate change are usually have the smallest ability to adapt to it, and that's an important one. But so thank you. Certainly looking forward to seeing what's ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks again for your leadership, Graham. Big projects, small projects, and then when I think of the passion and the energy between you and Mr. Yamin, it's a pretty powerful, passionate group. You can take very complex issues and break them down. Very excited by this work. Very excited by the leadership, obviously with the help of organizations like yours, but the city is really putting forth here. I think lots of communities across the country are talking about it, but I'm really proud on where we are in the process, and that you've now, with Mr. Yamin and your steering committee and this council support and other government support, we have timelines. We have timelines for deliverables in the new year, and we have, adopted already our mitigation and adaptation action plans and so on. So really proud of the work happening here. So thanks very much. Okay, can I have a receive and file, please, Council? Okay. I think moved by Councillor Norton, seconded by Councillor Hickey. Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Okay, thanks. And thanks again for the long evening, you two. Okay, next item, Comm Clerk.
Okay, so 12.5 has been completed.
Yes.
So we'll move to the consideration of issues separated from the consent agenda. The first one is 14.1, and that would have appeared on your consent agenda as 5.1.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, we have a mover of a receive and file. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hickey. Okay, thank you. Anybody on that question? No? Okay, on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item.
14.2, Your Worship, appeared on your agenda as 5.2. It's the Osborne letter regarding heritage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reardon.
Okay, for 5.2 and 5.3, which are linked, related, I'd like to refer those to staff and the Heritage Development Board for consideration of a policy in regards to adding heritage properties to a register or removing them. And if I get a seconder, I'll just say couple other things, okay? And the only other thing I'll say is that, some of the things we want to know is, does spot designation work? There's an opportunity to be designated by the province of New Brunswick. If you are designated by the province of New Brunswick, could the grant program then be extended to those properties? I think theirs is even more stringent than ours. We know that properties in the heritage development area have maintained their value. So I think there would be some merit in looking at it and coming up with a policy for the future. Not tomorrow. But just to get it, I guess, on the radar.
Okay, Ms. Hamilton, are you gonna?
Members of council, I did want to share with council that Mr. Osborne raises a couple of policy issues that are under active consideration by our team as well as the Heritage Development Board. So certainly the referral would be appropriate. These issues will be considered at a future point by council as part of the upcoming review of the heritage bylaw that will be before you later this summer. And as part of this process, there is the requirement for a public hearing to be held by council. So certainly members of the public, including Mr. Osborne, will have the opportunity to address council as part of this process. And certainly in the meantime, the referral to staff is appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, could we, with that, Ms. Hamilton, would we also just give a quick update to Mr. Osborne, just to let him know where we are in the process? And okay, so if that's okay with the movers and seconders, okay, thank you. Deputy, do you have a comment on this?
Well, it will be coming back to us, I assume. I just have a concern that there was so much emphasis placed on the fact that you could get a grant, and I don't think that that's the real reason that your property should be in the heritage area. And because the other issue is that we had a big issue when we took one of the properties from the lower west side out, and I do have a problem with spot heritage designation in any area.
So I think
so
that's
I mean, if we're going to have a chance to talk about it another time, fine. I just want to.
Yep, that's the commissioner's affirming with a head shake, a positive head shake, it'll come back.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Okay, and on the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Okay, thank you, and we caught that for 5-1 and 5-2. Okay, thank you. Next item?
Next item would have been on your agenda as 5.15, Glen Falls flooding. It's now 14.4.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Strobridge, maybe first, and then he had asked for it to be pulled, and then we'll go to you, Commissioner. Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Thank you. Commissioner Hugenholtz and I had a bit of email conversation this afternoon because he had asked me if there was anything on there that was left out, and I felt that there was a lot left out. The report, the updated report, didn't, for me, offer any new recommendations or solutions. It was just an explanation of everything that's there. And then, of course, there was older reports attached to it that are still relevant because I don't think the information has changed. So I just wanted to propose a few questions to the commissioner. The first one is, I was told, and I believe I'm quite sure it was referenced in this report, that throughout Glen Falls, there's the ditches and the trenches that are there and are meant to hold water, and it's said that those are visually looked at, and if there's obvious signs of debris, it'll be removed. And I don't know if it's gotten to you yet, but I sent you just a couple of photos just 5 minutes before we got here. And one of the things that I have noticed, and one of the things that has been consistently communicated to me, is these trenches are overgrown now, and the pictures are there to show. I wish I could put them on there, but these trenches are not being. I'm asking why they're not being re-drug out. Like, I understand it's money, but there's things we got to do. We got to get it done. And I don't think I don't think the visual inspection is adequate enough after, a decade, maybe longer, since those trenches were dug out, and they've never been touched. I know there has been sometimes some debris pulled out of there because we've done it during spring cleanups, right? So if they're being visually inspected by the city, then by the time we get there, we shouldn't be pulling that stuff out. It should have already been gone, right? And those trenches are overgrown. I mean, how could they not be after, a decade or longer since they were first constructed? So I'm asking for action as far as, I don't know, sending someone in there and re-digging them out a little bit, cleaning them of the weeds. Maybe when you look at the photos, by your assessment, that's okay. I don't know. I don't know what they looked like when they were brand new. I don't know if they were 5 feet deeper and 5 feet wider, or if that's what they always looked like. So if I was wondering if you could just comment on that and advise, and please.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner?
Sure. Through you, Your Worship, I guess I would ask our Manager of Stormwater Maintenance, Monica Boudreau, to address those questions. Her group is the one that has responsibility for the regular inspection and maintenance of those drainage systems.
Great.
Okay.
I didn't send her the photos. I didn't realize that.
Okay, you're all set.
Yes, so we do have an engineering technologist that does check these locations once every 2 years. And they're not just done by visual inspections. He does use a GPS and compare all of his data to the original drawings submitted by the engineers who actually designed both the trenches and the detention pond. So I guess it's not just a visual inspection. It's a visual inspection every year, but GPS points taken every 2 years. So the last time we did this was 2 years ago. He will be going back this August or September to receive or to take more GPS points as well.
So why is it then when me and the other volunteers do spring cleanups down there, we're pulling couches and other debris out of there?
So the GPS points are merely to assess the sediment buildup. They don't necessarily pinpoint things like people dumping. That would be something that our crews would go and remove. When he's taking his GPS points, it's to take a representative sample of the sediment that may have been deposited across the entire trench or detention pond. To compare that back to the original design of the detention pond and trenches. It's not necessarily one location of illegal dumping or so forth.
So when was the last time somebody from your department actually physically went down there and walked through those ditches and actually looked at them in person?
So they were visually looked at last year by the foreman, and GPS points were taken 2 years ago in August.
And prior to that in-person inspection, is that something that was the first time it had been done in many, many years, or is there a regular maintenance schedule for that to be done?
We aim to do that every year, and we have been taking the GPS points from the beginning, from when the time that the detention pond was installed, as well as the trenches. It's been an ongoing process, and we've been doing visual inspections every year from what I'm aware of.
Well, then, who's ever doing them is not doing a very thorough job, or I wouldn't be down there pulling couches and other items directly obstructing what these are supposed to be doing. Right, so that's what I'm saying. I don't see how that's being done, because if it's being done, I wouldn't be encountering that stuff.
So, Councillor, just in terms of the debris and so on, so you could do. I mean, I don't know. I'm just surmising. You could do an inspection and you could inspect the ditch, and a week after you've done the inspection, which is not going to be done, and then for another year, somebody could roll by and dump a couch and a chair. And so I guess maybe back to you, Commissioner, is there I guess the public could report either to their counselor or call the 658 number if they see debris there. Are there any other mechanisms to, like, I'm just trying to bridge if there's a gap, as the counselor is saying, what are those mechanisms to get those materials out of those ditches? No, sorry.
Certainly our proactive inspections should uncover most and many of those issues. If this does occur after one of our inspections, certainly the avenue to report it to our main number is always there. I think it is important, there's certainly some dumping that doesn't necessarily impede drainage flow through those areas, so we need to draw that distinction.
No, I understand all about illegal dumping. Absolutely, it's a chronic problem citywide. But the reason why I bring that up is because these things are meant to hold water. They don't drain water. They're just meant to hold it so it's not sitting in your yard and in your driveway. But when they're full of things like that, well, that's eating up holding capacity of water. And my biggest concern, though, is not the one-off couch and the bicycles and all the other junk that's down there. Commissioner, have you had a chance to review those photos that I just sent over to you from here? Like, they pop up on your system yet?
I haven't seen them.
Okay, because these ditches were these trenches, how old are they? When were they first done, like 25 years ago?
Not sure, Monica, if you have the original information on the construction?
I believe it was 10 years ago, but I'm not sure on that. I'd have to check.
Well, I know the dredging pond off Golden Grove Road is much older than that, but
yeah, perhaps I could interject at this point. You raise a good question around capacity of that holding pond, and I guess the overall capacity of the pond that's been constructed is roughly around 70,000 cubic meters. To put that into perspective, we did engage terrain consulting to do. Some of the folks around the table may recall, to do some preliminary design around a piped diversion system that would collect a lot of the inputs into the Marsh Creek drainage basin into a closed pipe system for diversion into the Drury's Cove area. And that was not going to solve all of the issues, but was going to make a major impact to the flooding in the Glen Falls area. In terms of the overall volume of water that system was designed for, it was about just over 1.6 million cubic meters of water that was going to displace and take out of the system. So by comparison, the 70,000 cubic meter pond that exists currently is really a drop in the bucket. That wasn't necessarily intended as a flood fix for that area. It was more intended for compensatory storage to allow for some ongoing developments to occur within that drainage basin that could occur without worsening the flooding situation.
No, I understand that. I guess, Your Worship, what I was hoping for in this new report is some action items, not just reiterating the status quo. I know what the status quo is, and anyone who's ever chased down this information knows what the status quo is. And then and I was hoping for new action items, and there's nothing there. So I guess I'm challenging the department. You know, like I said, go out and put some rubber boots on and walk through those trenches and see them. I mean, I understand GPS coordinates, but I mean, you know, the pictures that I have, these things are grown over. They're grown over. And I don't know how that can still hold that amount of water. So action item, redig them out maybe or something. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right to me, that's all.
Okay, so thank you. So for tonight, I guess what I'd say is you've given some feedback. You know, we've got a report that is I think a receive and file for tonight.
Yeah.
You've sent some pictures. Let's continue the dialogue and we'll see where we go from there. I mean, anyway, we've got about 11 minutes before we time out for tonight.
Yep.
Certainly, you've passed along some feedback, and we'll have to continue the dialogue. So. Okay, thank you. Can I have a receive and file then, please? Moved by Councillor Hickey, had his hand up first, and Deputy seconded. Thank you. And all those in favor? Everybody contrary-minded? Thank you. Motion's carried. Next item? Oh, excuse me.
Your Worship, we had items that came from Committee of the Whole,
Yes.
and the first one is 17.1. It's a recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to Cherry Brook Zoo letter of intent.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Second by Councillor, but
One of these exactly.
Yeah, I
Deputy
can
Mayor,
read,
I can-
I'll read the resolution, Your Worship.
Sure.
Resolve that a letter of intent be executed with Cherry Brook Zoo confirming the parties agree to enter into good faith negotiations for a long-term lease of the site at the zoo, identified on a survey plan dated the 7th day of November 1977, titled Plan to Accompany Lease City of St. John to Cherry Brook Zoo of St. John, Inc., prepared by Dobbin Surveys, that the letter of intent shall provide a negotiations aforesaid shall be pursued upon the condition that the zoo is able to continue its operations generally as they currently exist without requiring or requesting any further funding from the City of St. John. B, one precondition to a long-term lease shall be the zoo providing the city with information which results in the city's determining at its sole discretion that the zoo will be able to operate during the term of such lease in a financially sustainable manner without any financial support from the city. And C, except with respect to pursuing negotiations in good faith, the letter of intent neither creates nor gives rise to any obligations or rights and shall not be construed by any third party as doing so, that the city solicitor be directed to prepare the aforesaid letter of intent and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute it.
okay, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Next item?
17.2, Your Worship, is a Committee of the Whole recommendations with respect to intergovernmental affairs position. And I have a resolution for that as well. The recommendation from Committee of the Whole is that a contract position Director of Government Relations and Strategic Communications be staffed for 1-year term, renewable at the discretion of the City Manager. And the Common Council approve a maximum of $150,000 to be allocated from the Restructuring Reserve Fund to support the Government Relations and Strategic Communications function over a 12-month period.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Reardon, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hickey, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. Next item? Yeah. A little louder, please, yeah.
A little louder?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
just a bit,
sorry.
yeah, we're just a bit, I think
Okay.
everyone's worn out.
Next item, Your Worship, Committee of the Whole recommendation with respect to Aquatic Center interim financing. And the resolution on that item is as follows. That council authorized Commissioner of Finance to provide interim financing to the Canada Games Aquatic Center of $75,000 for 2019 estimated operational shortfall during the period of June 2019 until the funding is provided by the Regional Facilities Commission budget in 2021 at the interest rate received by the City of St. John in the operating bank account, prime less 1.75%.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Reardon, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. Councillor Casey is an A. Thank you. Oh, excuse me, who did I miss? Councillor Casey? Oh, okay, thank you. Just Councillor Casey, thank you.
And the final item, Your Worship, is 17.4. It's a recommendation from Committee of the Whole, and it's with respect to C Street Estates subdivision lawsuit. And the resolution would read, resolve that the plaintiffs in the action brought against the City of St. John respecting servicing of the C Street Estates subdivision be advised that the City of St. John is not yet in a position to accept the settlement and direct the city manager to continue to obtain the information and agreements to enable council to accept the proposed agreement.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Norton, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Reardon. Okay, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. And then just before we run, just huge thanks again tonight. I mean, it's just by the wire, Councillor Sullivan's 9:54, room full of incredibly talented and dedicated staff who've given us tremendous reports and insights and advice tonight. And I, just want to say again, massive thank you, and to all those at home and in the gallery. This is your incredibly dedicated and talented city staff in service to us as taxpayers. So thank you very much. I don't thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, contrary-minded, nay was Councillor Armstrong, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Matthew. Wait, we may be tied here. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Yeah.